All right, come on in, come on in. We'll be starting in just a little bit. Alrighty. Welcome, welcome. Hopefully everybody can see me all right. Give me a second. Alrighty. Shalom, peace, peace, peace upon everybody. Hopefully all is well with you in thine house. All right, let's go ahead and get started. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of mine heart be acceptable in the Chafetz sight. He is our strength and our Redeemer, and it is in His name, which is His authority, that we pray, praise, proclaim, project, and protect. Today's message, Aman. Hola, mi nombre es Kofi. ¿Cómo está? Bonjour, je m'appelle Kofi. Ça va? Ni hao, namaste. Wasaya Nikitabuya, Ohio. I see you. Minute, Wagwan, Kamsa, Kamsamida, Aloha, Ciao, Onson, Habarigani, Aqua Abba, Madase, Itase, Jambo, Maybe Nikofi, Ninafaraku Gatana Nuewe, Boker Tov, Boker Tav, greetings, salutations, grand rising, hope all is well. Shabbat, I'm sorry, Shalom, Bakwar Tov, Barakalachan, Hava, Anai, Kovai, Khalit, Servants of Christ, Mashalakhi. Hello, everybody. Peace. I am Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant of Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time, but being a voice of the voices and speaking the unspoken. We appreciate you so very much. Thank you for joining us. And we're excited to be before you one more again. We give all honor and praise once again to the Most High, Yahweh Elohim. We give all praise and honor to Him from our wife, the Honorable Amma, who lives a life that is able to be honored. As always, you can check her out on TikTok, YouTube, our website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish. Not A and D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She is a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. And we're excited to be before you again. So thank you, everybody, for being on with us. Hopefully all is well. We're continuing in our Q&A series, or Q&A sessions. Excuse me. We do Q&A every other Thursday and Friday. So we're getting into that again. We actually have 3 things that we'll start off with. Of course, you can ask any questions or give any questions, comments, concerns that you may have. We have 3 things for today. Also, too, to give you guys a heads up, of course, we have persons with books coming out and different things of that nature. We have persons who are, doing stuff with jewelry, with food, with bracelets and stuff. Also, we are aware that many persons are dealing with stuff, especially if you get help from the government for your food and things of that nature. So some persons are worried about that. I believe they did something with the SNAP benefits to make sure that federally they were able to extend for some persons, but still there are persons who are willing to help, and persons that are with SOC or are tied to SOC via partnerships with have a lot of different things that they're doing as far as helping out. So we do have some stuff that would possibly we do have some stuff that would possibly make it I don't know what the word I'm looking for. But we do have some things that will possibly make it easier for you guys. I'll try to post some of it during the shout out. And we already have, we'll leave this up just to let you guys know if you're on this platform over here. We'll probably have to, we may or may not have to restart the live session because they are saying that I'm trying to block the screen, which comes because of the light issues that I have because of the phone. So sometimes the light is blocking my face and blocking my view, especially if I don't get it so close. So matter of fact, we'll do that now. I don't know. Well, I don't know if it's best to do it now or not. If I'm closer to the screen, you can see me. The further away I get, the light starts to block my face. So they've already on this platform restricted us and said that we're doing things to block the screen. So it is what it is. We'll pop. So if you're on now on this platform, and thank you everybody for being on. I see you. Growing everything, as a matter of fact, I'll say shalom to everybody as we're getting started. Hey, no, Sister Beck, Brother Keith, Coach Prospect, growing everything, Sister Deborah, Tim, Sister Jennifer, Brother Cole, and if I'm missing by Sister Tuckwa, aka Sloan, M King, etc. So I may or may not have to restart this. Trying to think if we should or not. And then I come back in and I'm like this the whole time in the video, which I don't know if I'll be able to keep that up the whole time. How you doing, Brother Ronnie? I don't know. We'll see how it goes. If it looks like persons are being restricted or we're not, some persons who are looking for us are not being given an opportunity to find us like they did yesterday. It was for different reasons yesterday, but now today they come up with different reasons every time. So if I say that we're going to come back on, you might have to come back on with us. I'm trying to think and pray about it real quick. Should we come back? Should we just restart now? Should we restart later? Right? Because then we get into it and then we have more persons and then I cut you guys off, the more of you that are on. I don't know, can we do this over here on this platform? We'll try it. They might do the same thing to us again, but we'll try it. If I come back on, if I restart, are you guys over here? Right, not over here, not over here. We're gonna stay on over here. But if you guys over here who I'm pointing at, if you see me pointing at you, is it all right if we reset and see if we can get past the restriction now versus having to do it later? Yeah, I know. I was just. I think that's what we should do. Yeah. How you doing, Brother Lamar? Okay. So literally, I'm gonna restart. If you give me once it shuts off, if you give me like 15 to 30 seconds, it should come back on. All right, and then we'll just get started. If it is restricted, it is what it is. But we'll go ahead and start now. All right. How you doing, Sister Deborah? If I didn't say so. All right. Let's go. So we'll restart. I apologize. Just when they do the restriction this early, it basically means they're making a point to where not only can new persons not come on, but also they're making it a point to say that they're, it's basically going to be that nobody's really going to be able to get on, even those who are with us. So I'm going to, I don't know, we might not be able to do anything about it, but I'm going to try my best. So you guys, thank you for being on over here. I'm going to go ahead and restart over here. So give me like 15, 30 seconds after it shuts off and come looking for us again. I promise you we'll be right back on, okay? So we'll go ahead and restart. Thank you for being on. I appreciate you. All right, we're gonna try this again. I'm still doing the same thing. I don't know. Okay, so we'll try this again. Anyways, we're gonna go ahead and get ready to get started. Thank you for being on with us. We appreciate you. Shalom, Barak, Shalom, peace and blessings. How you doing, Brother Jermaine? So we're gonna try this again. We'll see. See, that's the thing too that be messing with me, is even if I were to come down, it still does the same. It covers my face, regardless. So it is what it is. Hopefully you guys will be able to find us today. How you doing, Brother Rodney? How you doing, Gina? Everybody, how you doing, Eric? Everybody, come on in. They're coming back on. Had to restart. Hopefully this will work. If not, it is what it is. And how you doing? So we'll go ahead and get started. We have Q&A session. We have a few questions already to get us started. And so if you give us just a second, we'll get started again. If you'd like to rise to your feet in reverence of Yahweh's word, feel free to do so. How you doing, Tahiti? Thanks for being on with us. Lexi, everybody, come on in, come on in. The water is fine, so to speak. A little cool outside, getting into the winter weather. We're going to be trying, we restarted the live. Hopefully that'll allow persons who would like to find us since they already restricted us before we got started. Alrighty, so anyways, hopefully all is well with you. Thank you for being on. We appreciate you. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started with our Bible pledge and jump right in. You can put your right hand or your Bible or your device in the air and just repeat after me. This is my Bible. This is my sword. And this will I trust. For Yahshua is Lord. No sword of God shall ever be heard. For this is my Bible. And this is Yah's word. Hashem Yechavach. Aman. Yechavashim, his name is authority. Let it be done unto us. You may be seated to go back to what you were doing in the presence of the Most High Yah. Thank you for being on with us today. Once again, we appreciate you. Hopefully all is well. So we'll go ahead and get started with who we have on, and hopefully others will be able to join us. We have to restart. So hopefully persons will find us again. How you doing, Sister Jennifer? So we have 3 questions already. Really 2 that we're asking. One, since it is Hallows Eve or Halloween, we'll go ahead and talk about Halloween some as well. I'll probably start there, and then we'll get into some other questions. We had a question about who is Esau and Edomites and things of that nature. We had another question regarding shout music in assemblies. So so we'll get into those first, and then whatever questions, comments, or concerns you guys have, of course, you can feel free to let them be made known, and we'll get into them. How you doing, Muhammad? Ori, is it? Orai? Vibrant Soul, Just Tony. Everybody coming on all platforms, we thank you so much. Sister Shirley, praise y'all. Everybody, welcome back, Sister Deborah. All right, so today, once again, is Q&A. It is October 31st. We do not celebrate Hallows Eve, by the way. So for those who are looking for us to figure out how we do that, we do not do that. That's the answer to that. But we will talk about the history of it. And then we'll go into our other 2 questions that were already submitted. And if somebody has more questions, you can feel free to ask those questions as soon as you feel that you should, right? Or that you feel led to. So, and we try our best to make sure that these questions, comments, concerns, etc., are answered as much as possible. We try to give, so if you can, and thank you for the repost, for the share. We try to make sure that we give as much as we can in this, because many persons have many different questions. And this is something that we feel is not done enough, where persons can just ask questions. Thank you. Welcome back, Brother Lamar. Thanks for the repost. So we'd like to be able to ask as much as we can, or excuse me, Brother Yachasab, and Brother Jay. So hopefully all is well. And thank you guys for being on with us. So if there's questions that come up, or whatever the case might be, even if they're not your questions, even if they're questions that don't necessarily have to do with the series we've done, or the Bible, or, we'll come through a biblical prism. Right, that's what we're going to look through. The lens we're going to look through is still going to be of law, of Tanakh, of Torah. But that's what we're going to come through today. But thank you, and I appreciate you guys. Thank you for the love. So, and one more thing I have to do. So hold on one second. Oh my greatness. Why does it do that on a live session? Okay. Excuse me. So I apologize. Trying to make sure. Sound better? Yeah. Oh yeah, that's great. Yeah, I've noticed I got a little bit of my singing voice back, kind of. I never could sing, but sing a little bit. So that's always a sign that voice is rested and stuff like that. I talk all the time. I talk too much. So my singing voice leaves me. We were doing some stuff yesterday, praise God. But yeah, so thank you everybody for being on. We appreciate you. How you doing, Frank? And everybody, come on in. So, how you doing, Sister Carla? Shalom to you, peace. So today is Q&A, and we're getting back into our questions. Any questions, comments, or concerns anybody may have. We're going to start off talking about Halloween, or Hallows Eve. Not because we celebrate it once again, but because it is something that, obviously, especially us being in the world but not of it, we have to deal with quite a few things, and there will be some persons outside. Who knows? How you doing, Sister Shima? Happy belated born day? Is that correct? Was it just your born day? I meant to reach out to you yesterday. Was it your born day, or somebody in your family's born day yesterday? Okay, happy belated born day. Yam Yasalav. I apologize. I dropped the ball. Sister Mignon didn't drop the ball. She keeps track of a lot of those things. And she was like, we were saying some other born days, and happy born day and Yam Yasalav for the October born days to everybody who had one in October. Yeah, it was yours. Yeah, she was like, don't forget Sister Shima. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, usually I have Sister Shima's on board. I didn't have it this year. Usually I have yours in mind. I usually say something to you. So happy born day. I apologize. I hope you enjoyed yesterday, and prayerfully everything went well. And we thank y'all for another year of you being able to barak arats, to have a blessing that comes upon the earth. So we did say it publicly, but I didn't reach out to you, and I apologize for that. So I'm glad that you are on today, and I hope that you had a lot of fun yesterday. Um, Prayerfully, who knows, as adults, we don't really get this, but prayerfully you had some kind of rest on your born day. Or if not, hopefully it's coming. So you were toiling, yeah. So hopefully you get a little makeup to have some rest coming up. Yeah, so today is going to be Q&A, and in our Q&A today, once again, we have 3 questions already on deck. Doesn't mean that you can't put questions in the chat on either platform that you're on or any of the platforms you're on. We have a couple platforms that are not on yet, but they will be. So I'll probably be stepping away for like 3 minutes or so. And about we'll give another like 45 minutes, something like that. And then I'll go and try and get another device and get it on here so we can get the others going. But thank you all for being on again. We appreciate you so very much. We've been trying to put more stuff in the Google Calendar invite, and we have different things going on. We will probably have start again with our community meetings. It's been a while with everything going on, even though we're doing holiday meetings in this place. But we'll try to get that going again next week. And we're asking that you guys continue to pray. You said you cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons. Okay. So I'm not sure what that is. Usually we say shalom and peace or hello. I don't know if that's for Q&A or if that's just you trying to say that I'm a demon or something. I have no clue. But either way, if that's your way of saying hello, I guess shalom, peace to you. If it's not returned, I guess we'll wipe the dust. We'll see where that is. But I don't think, I don't remember, I don't recall where we were at on that, or if that was even come up today. We've been doing readings. But anyways, welcome to everybody. We appreciate you. How you doing, teacher? I think that was the name I saw pop up as well. Orlando, if I didn't say so already. So today in Q&A, first things first. Oh, I guess Halloween. I'm sorry, Frank. I'm slow. Halloween. so excuse me. I did say something about it. All right. So my bad. Hallows Eve. So what we're talking about. So first question out the gate, or first thing we speak on today. We did not celebrate Halloween, obviously, but just a little bit of background on it. I'm not going to go deep into it. We have a whole bunch of stuff recorded already on there. So you can always find what we talked about by simply just going through our recordings and seeing when we talked about, the worldly holidays versus the Hebrew holy days. Also, we have a whole thing specifically just on Halloween, at least a couple times, I'd say, because we usually do every year. We'll usually do something specific just to Halloween. But since our Q&A day today falls on Halloween, we'll just give a little bit of a follow-up on it, or a little bit of a review. How you doing, Flash? Shalom to you. So, when we talk about Halloween, a lot of persons don't recognize where it comes from. And it even kind of answers the question that somebody gave regarding, Edom, Esau kind of goes through the same barrel as far as culture and nations and countries. A lot of us forget that we are in a kingdom, and there are many kingdoms, even if they're false kingdoms, even if they're corporations. Like the United States is a corporation, right? Not a country. But countries are really, we've forgotten that countries are really family groups, and countries have rulership, which is a chieftain of a family, right? Like, and we have nations within the nation. So you have sub-nations, or you have lords under lords. Excuse me, same kind of thought process, same kind of concept, right? So in this stuff that we're talking about with Halloween is something that was the mixing of iron and clay, or comes out, at least our modern Halloween that we look at. I won't even say ours, it's not ours, but the Halloween that persons celebrating, that they'll be going through tonight. Some persons have already been doing it today. Some persons will do it with their children today and tomorrow, whatever. That is something, the modern lens of it comes through Christianity, believe it or not. Now remember, Christianity is the mixing of iron and clay. So when persons hear Christianity or the mixing of iron and clay, a lot of persons miss that Christianity is not the way. Right? Christians are not followers of the way. At least most of them are not. And many of them, if you say that to them, are miffed, marred, frustrated, upset. How dare you say that we're not followers of the way, that we're not doing what's righteous? But they will find excuses, even with a lot of them that do harvest day. you'll find that a lot of them will say that they don't do Halloween, but they do Harvest Day. Or there's even a somewhat infamous now video that floats around. I think it's been around at least for a year, where there's a woman with her child, and they're dressed up. I think the child is dressed up like Toto from The Wizard of Oz, and she's dressed up like Dorothy. And she comes on and she says, "We don't celebrate Halloween. We just like to dress up and have candy." And then a guy comes right behind that and says, "Well, that's Halloween." That's exactly what Halloween is. Now, that's not exactly what it is, but there's a mix and a match where persons still would like to participate in something that we are told to be explicitly told, to make sure that we are exclusively separate of it, if that makes sense, right? So when somebody's talking about Halloween or Hallows Eve, Halloween is something that existed, right, before the church had a hold of it. But what happens with the church, what happens when you talk about Roman Catholicism, Orthodox Christianity, or Christianity, Orthodox Christianity usually will be a little more separate on certain things like this, so you won't always see it seep into that side of things, which is Eastern Rome versus Western Rome, Orthodox being the eastern side of Rome, right? And Roman Catholicism, which then has Protestantism come out of it, which is supposed to be a so-called protest against Roman Catholicism, even though they still have a lot of different views. I mean, a lot of the same views still, but basically you have an east side of Christianity and a west side, as explained in Daniel chapter 2, when you get past Babylon and the Persians and the Greeks and the Romans, then you have 2 feet that are split up, right? And 2 feet, you have a right side and a left side, you have an east side and a west side, you have Orthodox, and you have Roman Catholicism, which turns into Protestantism. And in Christianity, really in any kingdom, in any nation, when you begin to expand and you begin to have power, what do? You said whoever does evil has not seen the Most High. Okay, sure, right? So in these things, what you see happen in a nation, in a nation of, well, the beast, if we will, if we want to go there, what you see but any kingdom, right, is when you expand, what you do is you give persons power. But in Christianity, what you do is you give them power. How you doing, Minister Morel? Shalom, peace. So what you do is you give persons power, but then what happens with these Christian nations, these Christian kings, Christian queens, etc., and even the popes are basically worldly kings, right? Matter of fact, if you look up the first popes, they aren't really worried about celebrating the Bible or the Word that much, as much as they are about ruling, right? And thank you for the love. So you have what happens is you give them power, and you realize that what happens in Christianity, and really, somewhat in almost every kingdom that's existed to a certain degree, is that you allow persons to have different types of worship that they had with the foreign, spirits, foreign deities, sperare, Eurijas, Yorubas, etc. You allow them to keep certain things from it, but you basically do what we call here, playfully, sprinkle some Jesus on it, right? So what they do is they say, "Oh, okay, we're going to take over you. When we take over you, persons will start to fight back if you begin to take away their belief system." So what they say is, okay, you can still keep a lot of your pagan, demonic views and different practices, but you have to now relabel it and say that it belongs to Christ. And as long as you do that, these persons were allowed to do so. This is why you have Ishtar, or the Easter Bunny. Easter Bunny coming from worship of Samarias, or Ishtar, in which she made it a point to say that she came from the moon and the egg, and that her son/husband, who had died at that point or been offed at that point, was supposed to be the sun spirit, and so the sun's rays impregnated her, and she got pregnant and gave birth to the son, who was Tammuz, right, who died. And so a lot of persons, when you see moons and stuff like that showing up in their worship, or moon and stars, or moon and sun and things like that, a lot of us don't know that came from that. Or you'll see, right, when it comes to Christmas is Saturnalia, it is winter solstice, it is the celebration of Sol Invictus, it is persons being afraid of the changing of seasons. We're told specifically in the Bible, how you doing, double OG, triple OG? We're told specifically in the Bible, in Jeremiah chapter 10, verses 1 through 5, stay away from that, right? But persons will still try to hold on to that. Matter of fact, they'll try to change things up and try to say Christ was born on that date. Christ was not born on that date. But since everybody's worshiping the sun, this is when the S-U-N becomes the S-O-N, right? And so now persons say, we'll flip it. How you doing, Brother Dwayne? And they say, we'll flip it. And since we flip it, they will. Yes, yes, Brother Frank. Yes, those are things that we do. Yes, thank you so much. It's not only for the orphans and widows and stuff like that. You should be more on point than that, right? There's 6 things that you should do. If you're talking about tithes are for the Levites, widows, orphan, poor, and the stranger. If you're talking about as far as giving time to as well, Yehashua or Messiah, Christ, Mashiach, he says specifically, hey, make sure that not only that, but those who are hungry, make sure that they're fed. Those who are thirsty, make sure they have something to drink. Visit those in prison, visit those who are sick. Make sure that those that are poor are taken care of, right? Make sure that those who are strangers, who are foreigners coming in, that we take care of them as well. So yes, right? But we're talking about Q&A today. I guess your thing is just saying random stuff, or I'm not saying random, but I mean, we have a certain thing I have to go to, so I'm not ignoring you, just letting it be known. But if you keep putting the stuff up, I mean, I guess as long as it's not against the word, I might not be able to react to every single thing you're putting up, but yes, we have to stay away from the world, right? And so in this specific thing, we want to make it known, and we want to make it very clear that with Hallows Eve is something that came before Christianity and was grafted in. A lot of people say, well, what do you mean it's grafted into Christianity? Well, look at Dia del Muerte, right? Dia del Muerte, right? You're going with Halloween, or you mean you're talking about Halloween? Okay, so once again, well, all right, well, each to each their own on how we present it. Okay, so if that's what you say you're doing, cool, right? So to each, but on that, I'm talking about Hallows Eve specifically. It existed already in places like what we call Scotland or Ireland. It existed in pagan communities. Pagan, by the way, is not just a religious belief. There were actually a nation of persons that were pagan who had a belief system, right? So, and all these different things, when we're speaking on this, they had this already, and it was not just one day, it was 3 days, right? And basically what happens with Halloween is it's a belief that it used to be that if somebody died, right, if somebody passed away and somebody died, that that basically their spirit was still alive, and sometimes their spirit could get stuck. Later on, you'll see the Roman Catholic Church start addressing this as stuff like you have heaven, you have hell, and then you have purgatory, right? Now, a lot of persons don't notice the Roman Catholic Church on the low has low-key said that not only is there no purgatory, they got rid of that apparently out of their doctrine. I feel like a decade, maybe a decade plus ago, or 2 decades ago or so. But they also got rid of hell. A lot of persons don't know that, at least in certain circles, it's known that the Pope said, "Oh yeah, there's no hell either." Right? Now you might disagree with that one, even though you can read the stuff for yourself. But Roman Catholicism says that they got rid of purgatory. Right? There's a lot of places where people say worship and they don't realize that a lot of persons have said that hell doesn't exist. And they are so-called Christians. That's why, once again, Christians mix an iron with clay, right? How you doing, Brother Alex? And yeah, it is crazy. But they used to have this thing called purgatory. If you're not aware of what purgatory is, there were like 7 levels of purgatory. And so if you were really, really righteous, you went to heaven right away. If you were really, really bad, you went to hell right away. And then they taught that if, depending on how in between you were, there were 7 levels you could be put on in between the two. And this was not necessarily voted by the Most High. This was voted by the saints, voted by the cardinals, voted by the Pope. Persons such as that, and saying who went where, right? So this is a belief system that they had out of that, and it once again kind of comes in with Halloween, because a lot of persons don't know that what happened with Halloween originally, even before it was a church thing, was that you have a person who dies, their spirits float around, especially if they aren't going where they're supposed to, depending on what kind of Visigothic or Gallic or Scandinavian ritualistic belief you have. You might believe that they haven't gone to Valhalla yet, or they haven't gone to Hades yet, or they haven't gone to Olympus yet, or they haven't gone to, whatever the case is. Oh, okay, Gary, all right, welcome, how you doing? So, and all these different things, and all these different things that are going on. So we have this mindset or this thought process that a lot of persons are not aware of, right? And that stuff made its way. So they believe even that, persons would be dead, they'd be gone, And what happens is, and this is not just a Eurocentric belief, this is a belief that goes all the way back to Africa and other places, even in the Americas, where an ancient belief that persons believe that you have your soul in your brain. Matter of fact, you know, if you know about melanin and you know about the center, right, the third eye, so to speak, and all that, a lot of persons consider that to be the soul, right, the seat of the soul. So, you know, this is something where a lot of persons believe that a soul of a person was there. So what would happen is the person would die, and they would believe that your spirit was going around, and they believe that since the sun during this time starts to be out less, right, we should not be afraid of the change of the seasons, according to Jeremiah 10, but they believed that the sun was coming out less. So that meant that the evil spirit, the evil main spirit, was taken over, and other spirits were happening, and you would see all the spirits of your family members, at least that was what was said, come around. And so they actually had, they would, you know, the whole thing of going, knocking on doors and asking for candy, right, started off with persons who would basically put out things for their dead loved ones. Even some of the stuff you see that happens in Roman Catholic churches, and some persons that might not notice it's Roman Catholic, that set candles out for loved ones, especially when, like, you know, now it's become, if a loved one, you know, leaves or is gone, and you're hoping they come back or something like that, you put a candle. But they would put candles out, and also too, eventually this becomes, you put candles out for the saints, things like that. But they would put candles out, and then they would start putting coins out. If you recall, even or if you've heard of this, when persons would die, you've seen it in movies and stuff, certain cultures, you put coins on their eyes. Even though a lot of the movies you've seen that in, they weren't doing that quite yet, right? But they were doing, like, if you've seen Troy, the movie Troy with Brad Pitt, when they put coins in the eye, they weren't doing that yet, but that is something they would start to do. And a lot of it had to do with the spirit, making sure somebody could get to the other side, right? That they can go ahead and they can have their soul rest where it was supposed to rest, and all those things, right? Pay the ferryman. There was all these different things. You've seen the Percy Jackson, right? You've seen a lot of different movies. If you you know, they usually put them in like Greco-Roman movies, but it was something that was upheld in a lot of Eurocentric spaces, right, as a belief. So, and by the way, paying to go into the afterlife is not just Eurocentric. It's a lot of places that believe that you have to pay, you have to give up something, right? Pharaohs believing they would turn into the netjers, or what people call gods. You know, that's why they did all the stuff with the pyramids, and they had to do certain things, write certain things. They learned the 40, the 40, is it 40, 42? I'm about to say the wrong number. The negative confessions, so the 40 confessions, 42 confessions of Ma'at, right, of righteousness or whatever, and they were supposed to learn that and go through that stuff and live a righteous life, so that then they could become netjers or spirits after. Thank you, 42 confessions of Ma'at. So these are things that you would see, excuse me, all over the place, right, as far as paying your way in. It wasn't just answering the questions, but that's why they had all that stuff. It was supposed to be something that helped them to ascend, even somewhat to even shoot out of the top of the pyramid to go into the heavens, to go into where they're supposed to be, right? So that was a belief system that they carried. So it's not only a Eurocentric thing. I want to make that clear. We will be talking a lot about Eurocentric stuff with Halloween, because that's where we are now. But that's not the only place where some of this mindset of what do you do in the afterlife comes from, right? So, but anyways, going back to that, so you have, as the church begins to expand, once again, you take over somebody, you say, now you guys are Christians, exactly the way we say you should act is the way you should act. Persons begin to revolt a little bit, so what do? Okay, we'll allow you to go ahead and keep some of your stuff, but you got to say it's about Christ. And so that's kind of where we get with a lot of these holy days, including if we speak on, forgive me, y'all, including if we speak on, like even Lent, right? Lent used to be something called Lupercalia. How you doing, Shoe Queen? Right? So if you look it up, so if you look up Lupercalia was the I'm sorry, y'all. So Lupercalia was celebration basically of the wolf, where everybody had as much sexual activity as they could, did as much sexual activity as they could, because they believed that wolves, around February into March, they believed that that's when they were mated. So they, especially those with romantic values, remember Rome, the belief system of the Romans is that they came from wolves, or were either raised by wolves or born of wolves, and there were two sons, two boys. There was Romulus and there was Remus, two human boys. And Romulus eventually being the stronger, the alpha, offed his brother, because that's what they believe Wolf did. So he offed his brother Remus, and so Romulus became the leader of what you call Rome. And Romans, whether we believe in that part that I just said or not, this part is true, is that Romans really were a bunch of men who actually had left their families and stuff, and actually were kind of a penal colony. Like a lot of them were kicked out, a lot of them were warlords, a lot of them had gotten in trouble, and so they put together this colony, but it was of men, and they started taking over and actually taking wives from other persons, other people, other nations, and then they became Rome. Right? You think they were twins? They might, yeah, they might have been twins. I don't recall, but I think that sounds correct. They could have been twins, right? Or they probably were twins in the story, right? So that's how they come about. And so they were really big on wolves. How you doing? Just looking, and I missed somebody. I think I don't know if I said off the sauce specifically. How you doing? Is it Juicy Just Breathe? I'm not sure if I said that correctly, right? So this is where you had this discussion of a lot of stuff that happens with like Lupercalia. So Lupercalia, they have all this stuff, and then the next thing you know, out of Lupercalia, the Pope starts saying, "Hey, you guys are wilding out too much." Right? It's kind of like a lot of you don't know, but Christmas, the 12 days of Christmas, if you look up the history of that, you would change places. So priests would actually become like harlots and hookers and men of the night, and then the persons who were in the streets would become the priests. And so it got so crazy that they even outlawed, when they came over to the States, they actually outlawed Christmas. A lot of persons don't know that Christmas was not allowed in the United States for a while, and then it was allowed to come back. And so now you get kind of more of a clean representation, but there's a lot of holdovers of stuff, including that mistletoe, which goes back to Roman times too. But the mistletoe was something that you put above, which really meant if you were under the mistletoe, you were supposed to get it on. Right? So there's a lot of things that like we don't know come from other cultures. But yeah, so when you see somebody have Fat Tuesday and they come from Carnival or Mardi Gras, Mardi Gras, I can't say that correctly, but Mardi Gras or Carnival or stuff like that, when you see that happen, and then the day after everybody does Ash Wednesday, that was them saying, okay, you guys can still do one day of wilding out, right? And then after you wild out, you got to get whole. Right? That's basically where that comes from, right? And you can see in there, we're talking about French culture, we're talking about Portuguese culture, we're talking about Spanish culture, we're talking about English culture, we're talking about Russian culture. It goes many different places, right? Well, that one is not the roll. See, I can do the roll of the R's, like for Spanish, but on the Francais, they go on the R more so, right? So I can't do I can't always do that with French. I can do it with Hebrew. I can't do it with French that well all the time, right? Right. So, but yeah. So we have all those different things with that going on in that. So the same thing is happening basically with Halloween. Now Halloween, when they take over the belief system, what they do with Halloween, Hallows Eve, is this: they say, okay, we'll allow you to go ahead and do your stuff, but they put it in 3 days, and they put all the stuff we talked about. They just mesh everything together and say make it about Christ. So on All Saints Day or All Hallows or Hallows Eve and all the stuff that we have, it's actually 3 days. It's actually October 31st, November 1st, and November 2nd. So what happens on the 31st is they say, okay, you can go ahead and have your knocking on the door. And by the way, even like the head that you show, or I'm sorry, when you show up to somebody's house and they have a pumpkin, they used to have a turnip, right, or something, but they would grow something that was pretty big, and then you would basically put the head out there because they believe the evil spirit we talked of earlier. They believe that evil spirit came looking for the soul. They believe the soul was inside of the head, right? No, we don't celebrate. We don't celebrate those things. I'm just saying those are where those things come from, right? So they believe that the soul came from the head, right? It came from the pituitary gland, or not the pituitary gland. Somebody help me out. Third eye. Man, I haven't talked about this in so long. I know what everything is, what it's called. The pituitary gland is what activates the melanin, right? What is it? Thank you. Pineal gland, shaped like a pine cone. Should have had that in my Rolodex, my mental Rolodex. Yeah. So the pineal gland, right? And so they said basically, so they had that belief system too, right? So they had a belief system that like the soul was in the head. So what they believed is that, like, even Druids would come by persons' houses, looking for persons, looking for human beings. They would sometimes even say, well, the evil spirit decided we have to sacrifice something, so they would come looking for young maidens, sometimes young men, and or anybody. They'd be looking, I don't know what all the particulars in every single case was, but I know for the most part it was usually centered around young maidens. That's how, unfortunately, a lot of that stuff is done. And they would look for them and they say, okay, we have to sacrifice somebody, and they would sacrifice them, but they would take their head eventually, and that was a way of appeasing the evil spirit, right? So eventually that goes from that to, okay, somebody can come and give payment, right? So you can have coins ready, the same coins except they used to go in the eye. Maybe you can just give us those instead, right? But then that turns into persons would start wearing masks around their cities. And as they wore the mask around their cities, right, persons would be like, ooh, that's the spirit of thus and such. And then that turns into, well, these persons who are wearing masks started saying, you know what, why don't we knock on your door? And when we knock on your door, kind of almost like if you guys have seen the 80s movie, Amadeus, about the life of Mozart, right? Kind of like that, if you recall the scene where he thinks that he's seen his dead father come back, right? Um, if some of you, I'm telling my age a little bit there, but some of you might recall that. How you doing, King James stuff? And right. So, but you would see the in the in the movie or whatever, in the movie Amadeus, you would see him come in and he thought it was his dead father. Kind of the same thing where you have death mask or persons doing this, but this was supposed to represent your families. So out of that comes, okay, we'll give the person a mask that because we're afraid it might take somebody's head. Right, and then out of that you get, well, we'll just go ahead and put out the turnips and things like that, which eventually now have become pumpkins. We'll put out a gourd, right? A gourd kind of messy on the inside, and they believe that this tricks the evil spirits that are out, or just the spirits of persons that are walking around that might require something to be given. And so instead of taking somebody's soul, you can take the soul out of the head. That's the belief system. So eventually, when the Roman Catholic Church, and now a lot of churches continue to do the same thing, trying to call it Harvest Day, which is really crazy because our Harvest Day is literally in the spring. According to the Bible, our Harvest Day is in the spring. Matter of fact, when we get to Feast of Tabernacles, and Feast of Tabernacles, we have a certain thing that we already start doing as far as Harvest Day, and when it comes to Pentecost, we have a certain thing that we do again. So we kind of have two Harvest Days, one right at the beginning of the year, and then one in the middle of the year, both times saying we trust you with the rest of what's going to happen throughout the year, right? But for them, in their culture and stuff, they do this stuff in or now the church is trying to turn in the Harvest Day to make it okay for them to do. They still want to bob for apples, and they still want the children to dress up, and they say, well, you can dress up like Superman or like Wolverine or like an angel, and everything's okay. But we're not supposed to do these things. But anyways, getting back to the ancient way, so they would say they would basically have the pumpkin and the turnip, which is harvested. So you can see some ties there too, right? And they would say, well, when they take these evil spirits, if they take that, or persons come out and take it, they're taking that. Now, back in the day, kind of like what they do in a lot of religious beliefs, where they'll have all these persons give all this stuff, and then you come the next day, and you're like, where is all this stuff? And the Bible even talks about that, to where persons would give, and then they didn't know what was happening, and then come to find out it was revealed by the prophet. Yeah, these persons take everything you give, right? So, but back then they would put the gourds and everything out. Somebody would take their stuff. Now they have food. So you take the pumpkin, you try to trick them. You take the turnip, you put it out there. You try to trick somebody. Now somebody has all this stuff collected that they can eat and take it from you, messing with your belief system. Sounds in a way familiar to today, right? Right. And thank y'all for the love. How you doing, Sister Tia? Right. So you have a lot of different things working and moving. The Roman Catholic Church comes by and says, okay, what we'll do is on October 31st, the first day, we'll say that this is a day to where, yes, like we recognize that those who are in purgatory now are the spirits that show up and walk around, right? And so the first night you put things out to make sure that these spirits, or you put things out, you make payments, you do things, whatever. We'll say that that's tied into that. And the second day, you actually see these persons walking around in the mask even more, and you show them respect. And on the third day, right, you actually set up a plate in your house. You'll actually set up a meal, and this is still done in a lot of places in the world. You will set up a meal, and everybody will sit down and they'll eat together, right? And so, but the empty plates that you have, the empty slots that you have at the table, if you will, those are for the dead. So you still are given an offering and stuff. That's where all this stuff comes from. So you see candy and certain foods and certain things like that, gourds and the cornucopia, even though it's more so Christmas and Easterish, it still shows up for Halloween. It's the same culture, right? So all these different things are moving. All these different things are happening together. We're just not aware of it, but that's what that is, right? So obviously we don't believe in these things. We don't believe that there's evil spirits we believe there's evil spirits, but we don't believe there's spirits that are actually so-called gods that we're supposed to bow down to, be worried about. And we don't believe that in purgatory, we don't believe that we should be eating with dead loved ones and things of that nature, right? So that's obviously something that's against what we believe. How you doing, Sister Dawn? Right? You said they took what the Most High created and took it out of its natural use. That's right. So outside of its nature, right? So that's what a lot of persons are still doing. So when you see a lot of these things, and you see somebody saying trick or treat or things, and some of you are like, oh, well, it's so cute, and even though I'm not going to celebrate it, I'll still give candy. No, the whole giving of candy thing is basically falling into the whole thing of offering and worship and stuff like that, right? Right? The whole turnips and pumpkins thing is somebody's supposed to represent somebody's head and somebody's soul. So you're getting into some things that you want to be careful about. So obviously, I think I don't have to go extremely in depth more into that. I think we're all got in the same place where we know what the belief system is and what we should be doing. But I just wanted to, since it was October 31st, normally on a worldly holiday, we do explain what's going on for certain ones, and it's just best to not touch, especially that one. It's best to not touch that one, because and then if you know what's going on, once you get to Christmas, I know Thanksgiving comes in between, and Thanksgiving is this whole weird thing too. But when you get into Christmas is just us going deeper down that rabbit hole. So those are two that you don't want to touch. Then when you get to Ishtar, Easter, that's basically trying to, even going even further. But now what they've done is they've tried to attach Christ to each one, because that's what the Roman Catholic kingdom and then eventually Christian kingdoms after that protested the Roman Catholics but still did the same thing that they do, right? So yeah, so it's just a little refresher course. Normally we would take the whole day, but since it's Q&A day, I prayed about it. We're going to be faithful to Q&A, but I wanted to make sure I started off with that, because that is something that is somewhat traditional, but also is necessary for us to recognize, like, this is why we don't do that. And if persons have questions, comments, and concerns that come up throughout this, I'll do my best to answer. I don't have my laptop with me, my MacBook with me today, so certain things if I can't come off the dome with it today, I probably can't go deep into it, right? No problem. And thank y'all, and thank you for helping me with some of those terms. I was forgetting. I forgot pineal gland. Pineal gland is like, usually it's hard for me to forget, but I haven't talked about this stuff directly in so long, so I apologize for some of the small terms. Thank you for your help. So now to one of the questions that was already given. It is Q&A day. One of the questions that was given to me already is there's two that I had received yesterday. I'm going to do the shorter one first, then I'm going to run inside for hopefully 2 minutes and grab something, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to get to the next question, and then whatever questions come up after that, I promise I'll get to as many as possible. So this one's pretty easy, or well, not easy, but pretty simple. It's kingdom sense, not common sense, but y'all get what I'm saying. It's going to be not as difficult to answer. So somebody specifically asked me yesterday, hey, could you talk about basically hooping and hollering, and can you talk about shout music, and where does it come from? And the person says they're irritated by it. They're getting irritated by it. All right, so I told him I would answer it. By the way, we have talked about that before, right? We have talked about those items before, but we'll talk about them again today. Yeah, it is pretty chilly out here. It's not too bad though, but it's getting to where I don't have my winter stuff with me where I'm at. So prayerfully, we'll be on our way back. If all works well, we'll be back on our way back up north this weekend, and I'll be able to finally get my other clothes and my coats and stuff. I have a coat somewhere here. I think it's still in the RV. I got to go find it. But anyways, oh, okay. You know what? That's the first time I've been called Black Hagrid. I mean, it's still corny, like you coming on and not even be able to say hello, but it is what it is. Welcome on. Hey, you got anything better? I'll be telling you, trolls, you got to be better than that. Right? That's kind of low hanging fruit, but it's kind of funny, I guess. But so as far as the hooping and hollering, basically, the person was saying, why is it that everybody's singing and preaching, which is hooping and hollering? If you don't know about hooping and hollering, there is some cultural reference point, but we have to be careful. And the shout music. So, real quick on this, I'll start with the shout music first. They really same answer for a lot of stuff. Um, One of the things that we don't talk about enough, I think persons get tired of me speaking about it on here. I try my best, believe it or not, to not speak about it as much as I do, but I probably should speak about it way more. However, I know many of you get turned off when we talk about these things. Well, so there's a lot of influences, right? So if I saw so there's so many different things. First of all, we just like we don't talk a lot about enough about the influence of things that happen through chattel slavery. Somebody says you guys talk about racism all the time, but that's not what I'm saying. Only in as far as racism, there's a lot of things that happen because of chattel slavery, where a lot of cultures are forced upon each other, right? And you have you have two things that are going to happen when you force a bunch of persons, because as much as we just think we all blackity black, right? In this sense, I agree with the person that says black is not really a nation. How you doing, Toya? Right? There are nations who have black in the title of their nation, right? If you talk about Ethiopia, those are persons who literally are blackened by the sun. The Cushitic persons. If you talk about Kemet, they believe that they literally come from the black sands. That's why they were so dark, right? There are persons who are known as slippery blacks in Africa. There are persons who are known as the Khalifa people. That's where you get Californians from. So there are persons who don't mind being called black as a nation, right? But in this sense, right, everybody in chattel slavery, when they said black, was the one drop rule, right? The less black you were, the better supposedly you were. But at the end of the day, everybody that was black was black. That includes Native Americans, right? And Native Americans, when we say that, we lump everybody in the same thing. Forgetting there's Wampanoag and Khalifa and Foot and Blackfoot and Choctaw and Creek and Navajo and in Inuit and Inca, so-called Aztec. The list goes on and on, right? Um, so we forget that there's thousands of nations in the Americas, bare minimum, right? There's thousands upon thousands of nations, but we kind of just go Native American. Or it's like whenever somebody talks about Africa, and we talked about being a monolith yesterday, but they make Africa a monolith. As far as somebody will say, oh, okay, cool, you're from Ethiopia. Man, I know, I just met somebody from Ghana. It's like those are two completely different cultures. Right. Well, the same thing happens through chattel slavery, where you got a bunch of persons that were forced, and either one of a couple things going to happen. If everybody's forced into the same place, either they'll fight each other, or they'll survive by coming together and saying we're just going to put everything together, right? So that's why I say even in the Bible, when we talk about culture, and this is going to come up with the third question, with the next question coming up. Um, this is going to come up as well. But we have to talk about nations. You have to talk about culture. You can't just make the assumption that everybody black who was put into slavery automatically believed the same thing, right? Right? Like you when we talk about the so-called Christian values that call us Toussaint Louverture, to help out Dudley Bookman and to help out Jean-Jacques de Sillon and others, and forgive me, I'm forgetting the prophetess name that was down there as well, in Haiti or Haiti. Um, they look at Christianity way different. Matter of fact, they're looking at hoodoo, and then Christianity eventually coming through hoodoo, right? So when Toussaint Louverture reads the Bible and says, "Oh, I can be Moses like for my people as well," he's also looking at through the prism of hoodoo or voodoo, right? Him more so voodoo or voodoo, right? Which is also over there a mixture of a bunch of different things, because voodoo or voodoo over in West Africa that comes over gets mixed in with a bunch of stuff too. So, right, and kind of the same thing because of those who were over the slaves, right? Roman Catholics, Jewish persons, Protestants even, right? And they're mixing and matching a lot of stuff. Same thing, right? Like sprinkle some Jesus on, right? And so if you say that it's about our Jesus, you can kind of get away with a lot of stuff. So, I've even been to places to where we would allow other churches to use our buildings for evening services, and use like the upstairs, and then you go upstairs, and we found that they were like literally, cutting up chickens and doing stuff, and caught them a couple times with pieces of stuff in the sink, and we're like, oh, Like this is, you know, that's why we feel in the spirit on here. Sorry, y'all got to go, right? Like so, this stuff still exists, and it's still heavily influenced, right? But I'm not here to say there's anything wrong with singing. I'm not here to say that there's anything wrong with praising. Obviously, there's not. There's nothing wrong with dancing. But when you get into certain things culturally, right? You talking about uh, like the shout, the dance, the 1 2 1 2, going back and forth, and now it's become a whole thing. You put your splits with it, and people doing the James Brown, and you wear your heels, and make sure you got your tambourine and all that. There's nothing wrong with a tambourine. There's nothing wrong with high heel shoes. There's nothing wrong with dancing. But the shout dance specifically was a mixture of culture. Remember, you're dealing with Gullah Geechee, you're dealing with Seminoles who get a lot less credit than they ever should. You're dealing with Anakitawiya, which is the name of the original Cherokee. The original Cherokee name, which literally means translates to the people of Yah, right? But you have a lot of persons who are being mixed and put in together. Then bring that on top of a lot of Africans who are coming over, right, in chattel slavery. So you have a lot of those ideals coming. Then you have persons who are slaves already, who are already have a bunch of stuff mixed in and are trying to be like massa, and then they get into stuff. Then you put somebody as pastor over it and things of that nature who is reading the slave Bible. Matter of fact, a lot of stuff when we go to Savannah, Georgia, you'll discover that they actually use and preach out of the slave Bible while owning the church and while writing in Hebrew and while knowing enough Hebrew still to if you don't know, it's not cursive Hebrew. The Hebrew is Hebrew that they wrote is actually Hebrew when they wrote it on those pews in that church in Savannah. They made a coded Hebrew because they knew that their masters understood Hebrew as well. So rather than make sure so since they knew that, they took Hebrew and they actually made their own version of it, just so that they could write messages to each other, and the messages would be stuff um, that was straight about the slave Bible, right? But also would help you maybe to go to freedom or help those that came through on the Underground Railroad. So, a lot of this stuff, like I said, it gets mixed in, and we don't recognize like the power of these people that are coming together and being mixed in, right, with each other. Even Cherokee persons in Tennessee, who before you even think of them as being chattel slaves, are already following the way, right? So there's a lot of different things that are going on with that. But that being said, if you're talking about the shout dance comes from what a lot of these persons had all over the place that were being enslaved, which was something called a rain dance. Now, the rain dance more so is Native American and more so Mexican. That's why I said in this case you got to mention Seminoles, but also Gullah Geechee as well, right? But you're having a lot of different things happening culturally that are coming in, and so this rain dance was something that was done over and over again, and eventually over time, right? Because we know in the Bible, rain, right? When it does not rain, it's really supposed to be due to you being cursed and you needing to repent. But in the repentance and necessity for rain, and even sometimes when it rains, you as a slave might not be able to do some of the things, so you may even be able to get a little break on certain things. So the rain dance was something that made its way in and kept on being there. So when you have somebody do the shouting in church, or if you're not in church but still do the shout dance or whatever when you get happy and everything, that's actually a rain dance. That's where that comes from. And it's a mixture of many different cultures who have rain dances that are very similar, which shows that, you know, you have now even got to talk about Omekshi, if you know about them, right? You have to, that enters in because you're seeing the mixture of Africans and Native Americans coming together. Although we know, once again, we're not a monolith, so many different African nations, many different Native American nations, but you see this stuff coming together, a lot of them enslaved, and so now you have this thing that no matter where you go, especially in the Americas, right? You see it in Africa big now too, but especially in the Americas, you'll see the rain dance pop up, or what we call a shout, right? And then as we get instruments, right, more instruments, we had the organ to it, we had the piano to it. Back before then, you weren't even allowed to have those things, so you had this, right? And then eventually they allowed bass drums. Some churches you still go to today, especially in the South and certain places of the South, they don't allow anything but a bass drum. And a mother, mama of the church, old head, she'll get on there and she'll start hitting the bass drum, right? And she be tearing it up, right? But that comes from a culture, that comes from certain things. But they even used to think that the organ, when the organ came in, it was new. Oh, the organ, the piano, all these instruments, that's not what Yah wants us to. Even we say praise him with this, with the heart, with the symbol, with the tinkling, this and that. But they didn't want to hear that, right? But those are things that come culturally. So when you see the shout music or the shout dancing, it's actually a rain dance that over time was just incorporated in. I'm sorry, you said I think if you make it about yourself and getting attention, then it's wrong. Okay, I apologize. I don't remember what I was talking about at that point. I'm sorry. Right, but yeah, if you're doing something just to bring attention to yourself, it could be considered wrong for sure, right? Even though not everything that's selfish is self-centered, but I don't remember exactly what I was talking about. Right? Oh, okay. I'm not saying me. I literally don't remember what I was talking about, so I can't make a comment on that. I apologize. Um, but yeah, so and when we're speaking on the shout dance and the shout music and all that, that's where that came from. It's actually a rain dance. So even that, there's a spirit. So we do this thing where, because we're trying to find out where we're from and what we need to do, right? But this is why it has to be bigger than just black and white. You have to realize that a nation is not just based on a color. We've had so much stuff through chattel slavery given to us that we've forgotten that, right? But there are, like, just in Ghana by itself, right? Or what we call modern Ghana, because ancient Ghana was Mali, right? But in modern Ghana by itself, even to this day, you're talking about thousands of nations, right? You're talking about hundreds of languages, So we have to take that into account, that there's a lot of different things that influence, and so we'll just look for anything to hold on to, right? That's why a lot of us, we've been delivered from Kemet, but a lot of our people want to make sure that we identify with Kemet still, not realizing that Kemet meant bondage before there was such thing as chattel slavery. And yes, we have Kemetic blood, DNA, but it doesn't mean that that's our nation, because even persons of Kemet left with us in the wilderness, and when we mixed over 40 years and then went into the land of Canaan, we didn't go in mixed as many nations, we went as one nation, right? So a lot of this stuff, when we talk about nationality, persons don't get it because we've been so inundated with color and stuff. And by the way, it also hurts us in the opposite fashion, because some persons now, because they're so tired, even some of us, where we want to make sure everything, all of it, and black people are racist now, black, and we be sounding sometimes like that too, and it's like, well, okay, and all this stuff, time out, let's have a conversation about nationality, right? Ruth was not an Israelite until she was grafted in, until she was married in. Once she's married in, she's Israel, right? I know it still says Ruth the Moabitess in your English Bibles, but Ruth is Israel, right? A lot of persons don't know that. A lot of persons don't know Job's second wife is Israel, right? We don't read outside the 66 books, so we might not be aware of that. But Job's second wife is Israel. Matter of fact, we're going to get to that on the next question I was talking about. So you have to get to a place where a lot of persons don't recognize. Even that's why any man who married an Israelite woman was supposed to be circumcised. Why? Because circumcision means you follow the law, and that's a sign you are Israel. So you have to become us before you can marry a daughter of Israel. And a daughter of Israel is supposed to marry an Israelite, right? It's a nation. It's a nationality, right? It's not only your bloodline. It is that. Bloodline matters. DNA matters, sure. But if you get the bloodline and you don't follow the law, you still can go to Shalom. How you doing, Sterling? Right? So a lot of these things, we don't think about culture or nationality, kingdoms, how they work, right? The kingdoms under kingdoms. Hey, you can keep this as long as you do this. We forget. So there's a lot of things that we keep up. And when you go to different countries, you'll see a lot of different things that are interesting. You go to the Philippines, you'll see things you're like, they're obviously very Roman Catholic. In Protestantism, of course, they're very Roman Catholic. We know this because the persons who took over the Philippines were Spain. That's why they have Spanish names, right? That's how you can have a Filipino named Pablo Torre. How you got a name like Pablo Torre, right? Well, because you come from what's Filipino, right? You'll have Emmanuel Acho saying that he doesn't know anything with it. How you get a word name called Emmanuel? Now we know that there's Israelites were there, but you got that name Emmanuel because that's your Christian name. That's not even, your actual name is Chinadu. And if you go to a lot of West African places, a lot of African places in general, but West African especially, you're going to see that you get you have a name that's so-called African, right? From an African nation, and then you get a Christian name. Your Christian name will be what you're known by, right? But the reality is that you actually have a name that was given, but you got that because the persons who came over you said, this is what we have decided your names will be. If you go to France to this day, in France, you have to have a French name. They only allow certain names to be given. Why? It's their culture, it's their nation. We forget that a nation is a family. You said some don't have the bloodline. Well, some don't have the bloodline who become Israel, but once you become Israel, you are of Israel. You're adopted in, right? That's grafted, adopted in. Graft into what? Graft into the tree. If you're born again, even if you look at this, we've talked about this before, who is the woman, right? Oh, no problem. How you doing? Is it B? And how you doing, Mr. McMillan? Thanks for being part of the community, right? So even when you talk about being born again, nobody talks about born into who? Who is the mother? Who is the wife of Yah? Who is the woman in Romans 12? Sorry, Romans. Who is the woman in Revelation 12? Who is the woman in Genesis 3? Who is the woman who gives birth to the son in Isaiah chapter 9? Remember those four? Genesis 3, there's a woman. It's not Isaac, or it's not Amma, or it's not who you call Eve. That's not correct. Right? It's not her. It's not her. She is Adam's wife, but then there's a woman who will give birth to a son. And who is that woman? Isaiah 9 tells us that that child will be born to us. A son to us is given. The government will be upon his shoulders, and that child's name, his authorities, his sham, his name shall be what? Wonderful Counselor, the mighty Elohim, the everlasting Abba, and the Prince of Shalom. Right? Jeremiah 3 says, Israel, you are my wife. Right? And then Revelation 12 talks about the same woman in Genesis 3, but says now she has a crown on her head with 12 stars. You see? So Christ is the child, the woman is Israel. So when you're born again, who are you born into? Now, because we say that doesn't matter, which is Balaam doctrine, you're warned about that in Revelation 2:14. You're warned about it in Numbers 22, 23, 24. How you doing, Auntie Mary? Right? So you're warned about these things, for sure. You're told to be careful about those things. Right? So there's a lot of culture, and we just make the assumption that culture, and as we're going to get into the next question, somebody asked Esau, basically we just go, Esau is white. And that is extremely... that's extremely limited thinking, and it's wrong. It's a lie. But because look, chattel slavery did what it did, and we're starting to come back to ourselves as a people, even as a so-called black people. We're starting to say anything that any white person does must be evil. In the Bible, that never occurred either. We forget about the centurion guard who came on behalf of the Israelite and said, my house is not worthy of you, right? But he said that I know how authority works, because I'm a man of authority, because I'm under authority. And the same way that Caesar says, do thus and such, if I do thus and such, I have authority because I do what he says, whether he's there or not, it must happen as he says. He said, if you speak, right? That's what he said. If you speak the word, it will happen as you say. And what did he say to that centurion guard? He makes a statement like this. This is a statement that's powerful, and a statement that we don't want to hear, but it's the truth. He says, I have never seen such faith. Even, this is what our Messiah says. He says, I've never seen somebody who has that much faith, even in all of Yehud Sha'al, even in all of Israel. I've never seen somebody with that amount of faith that gets it. In other words, I've never had somebody speak kingdom to me as the king. You understand that because I'm the king of all, if I speak it, it must happen, even if I'm not there. Go ahead back, and whatever you asked for is done. And when he got back, he found out that his servant, which was his friend, was not only healed, but had gotten healed the same time he was talking to Christ. Right? Same thing with the Samaritan woman. Right? Same thing with the Samaritan woman. Samaritan woman comes up, and she says, she says, I'm coming on behalf of my daughter. Basically, he ignores her. She's still crying out. The disciples are like, hey, man, what you gonna do about this woman, man? She not worthy of being around here. Please, man, make her go back. Tell her to shut up. And then she keeps on going. Eventually, Christ tests her. He says, look, it's not, and he tells her a truth. In all honesty, he says, look, it's not me. It's not acceptable for me to give what belongs to to give what belongs to the children to the dogs. And that was a statement that was basically, they used to call, she was a half breed. So they were saying she's a mongrel. She's a dog. She's not purebred. Yeah, we have problems with that still to this day too, right? But he does that. He tests her, and guess what her response is? Her response is, yes, that's true, but even the dogs should eat from the master's table. It was a play on words because the word for master for them is also the same word for teacher. So she said, even if I am a dog, even if I don't belong, even if I'm not supposed to be sitting at the table, right? She said, still, what you have and what you can teach and what you can give me and what you can feed me, or what you can even give me a little piece of, would be enough to heal my daughter. So I believe in you. And what did he say to her? What was his response? Woman, which is a term of endearment back then. It's not like today, like, woman, shut up, right? Back then, if you said woman, he said it to his own mother. Woman, it's not yet time for me. When he turned the water into wine, it's a term of endearment. So he says, woman, great is what? Is your faith. Go away, whatever you ask is yours. Right? We have a mindset where we forget, sometimes we forget that the healing and stuff still needs to take place and person need to be there. So he's not, like we have this weird thought process. We forget that when somebody comes in there, grafted in and stuff, it's about a nationality. You're a Gentile because, yes, you were born a Gentile, but also because you're in the nation of jinns. If you leave the nation of jinns and you become the nation of Israel, you have to leave all that stuff behind. But if you leave it behind and you become us, then you'll never be that again. That means at that point you're adopted in, grafted in your family. Right? Ruth is family. She's not something separate. And yes, in your English Bible, they still say Ruth the Moabitess because they're also trying to give you a teaching tool. But that's not original. She's just known as Ruth. Ruth is in there. Ruth became one with Boaz, and before that, she was one with her husband. And see, this is how it works. Naomi loses her two sons. She has Orpah, she has Ruth. She says to both of them, hey, you have no tie to me anymore. Right? You have a chance now. My sons are gone. I don't even know what I'm going to do with my life. I'm going to go and sell everything I have and figure out what I'm going to do. But I'm done. I have no son. I have no grandson. I have no husband. I'm done. And she says, since you're not married in anymore, you can go back if you want. You don't have to be part of the nation. They didn't even live in Israel, but they were still married to Israelites. Therefore, they were part of Israel. You can go back now. That's what Ruth says. You can go back. You don't have to stay here. And what is it that Orpah and Ruth both say at first? No, we're gonna stay here. And then she says, no, go back. I'm not. Orpah turns back. Orpah didn't really want to go back, but Naomi wouldn't let her. But Ruth said, you know what? She said, your people, your nation is my nation, and your Elohim is my Elohim. She said, I'm Israel. I'm not going back. That's what she said. Right? Then they go back and she talks to Boaz. Boaz says, oh, I know about you. I know that you helped out Naomi. Naomi's my family. Right? I've seen your faithfulness. If anybody's Israel, it's you. He doesn't say it in those exact words, but he basically says, yeah, I know about you. I know what you're doing. I know you could have went back. You decided to come here. You're learning our ways. You're doing what you're supposed to do. And when she gets married to him, once again, still part of the tree. It's out of Ruth and Boaz that Naomi gets restored. A lot of persons even miss that part of it. He had to restore Naomi. He had to restore her lands. He had to restore her position. He had to restore her because she had no husband. He had to take her in. This is part of our culture. If you have a widow, the family's supposed to make sure the widow's taken care of. If the family can't make sure she's taken care of, then we as a people take care of her. But so in order for him to even do it, and he had to go in order. There was somebody before him that if he wanted to make sure that he took care of Naomi by taking care of Ruth, he could to get the lands. The guy didn't want to, so then he said, okay, I'll marry you as I desire. And now Ruth is restored. So since Ruth is restored, I'll restore Ruth. Ruth is restored. Her lands are restored. Now I can take care of you. So I can take care of Naomi. I can take care of you. It's nationality, right? It's nationality. It's not just national. You have to understand. That's why there's laws. If somebody's born right? Let's make this modern. If somebody's born in the United States of America, although we know it's a corporation and all that stuff, yada yada yada. But if somebody's born in the United States of America and they're born in Texas, okay? If somebody's born in Texas, but they break the law, right? They get sent to prison because they broke the law, let's say. Went to court, found guilty, they broke the law, they go to prison. Do you know that while they're in prison, they're not a United States citizen? You know that, right? They're owned, they're in debt to the United States, but they're not a United States citizen. That's why in prison you treat them as a slave. The 14th Amendment allows for that. That's nationality. A lot of you don't know that, right? I've been there, done it. You go to prison, you don't have a name. It's apropos I'm wearing this, I guess, today, right? You go to prison, you don't have it. This is old school. But this is no prison thing, but you know, it looks like the old school prison. What you call that? Not San Quentin. What's the one in the border over there? The Rock. Looks like the Rock, right? You know, but that's real. You know what? This is way off to the side. Sorry. I never thought about the fact in the Book of Eli, when Denzel Washington's character finally gets to that library, it was in San Quentin, or not San Quentin. What is that? Out there in the water, the Rock over there. I've been there just recently, matter of fact. I forget the name of it. But anyway, that's where they were actually doing the library was Alcatraz. that's where the library was. Anyway, that's off to the side. Sorry, my mind works in weird ways. But yeah, so and all those different things that are going on, and how you doing, Shantir, and all these things that are happening and going on, you're seeing a mindset, you're seeing a thought process, right? How you doing, brother TJ? And we miss those things that are mixed in. So yeah, so all these things are mixed together, right? And we have to realize that there's nations, and a lot of nations were forced in with each other during chattel slavery. And it happens even with those outside, even in Protestantism, even in stuff. You have to recognize and realize, for example, that persons who worship the moon are also where you get stuff like the Methodist Church. You get stuff out of that like, and that's Easter, Ishtar. That's why you guys like Easter and not Passover. Passover is different than Easter, right? But what is that? You have Ishtar, you have Easter, you have Passover instead of, what was I saying? Oh, also too, you have all the persons that worship the moon. That's where you got the Mormons, right? The Mormons came out of lunatics. Lunatic doesn't mean crazy. We not consider lunatics to be crazy, but lunatics are persons that worship the moon. Lunatic is not crazy. It's somebody who worships the moon, right? Lunar worship, lunatic. That's what you're talking about. So it's not exactly worship in there, but you get what I'm saying. The luna part, right? A lunatic, right? Lunatic, like a fanatic. A fanatic is a fan. A fan is short for fanatic, but fan, the first part of the word, right, is somebody who is a fanatic. A fanatic is somebody who's a fan. If you're a fan of someone, then you are a fanatic. So if you're a Philadelphia Eagles fan, you would be a Philadelphia Eagle fanatic, right? The tick can deal with zeal and stuff. That's yeah, we'll go with that for now. If you're dealing with the tick or the tick or the teak, right? The T-I, I think you say T-I-Q-E, or in English you say T-I-Q-U-E, right? Dealing with the Latin and the Le Français and stuff like that. That's come from the Latin. But yeah, so when you're dealing with that eek, right, is a something of, or we'll deal with zeal if you want to right now, you know, the zeal of. So yeah, but the fanatic, or fantastic, even fantastique, or fantastique, right? Like if you're dealing with of something, right? So fantasy, fantastique. Oh man, that's like a fantasy. That's what you're saying. It's of, or it's like it's a fantasy. Fanatic. Oh man, you were a fan of, right? So that's what we're dealing with, a lot of stuff. So now you get to, back to the. So that's the shout dance part of it. When you start talking about the so-called hooping and hollering, And the Lord said, huh? And that's, come on. Do you hear what I'm saying? The Lord said. I said, the Lord said, right? That's also part of cultural stuff. Now, would I say that's even evil per se? Not necessarily, right? There's a lot of cultures, and in your culture, you would sing, have certain things that you repeat, that you chant, and different things like that. Just like when we do praise and worship. Praise and worship is basically, a singing. It should be singing the word, right? But you're basically singing something to come into agreement, chanting it over and over again, and getting to a place to where there's an aman or an amen or an ashe, right? An agreement, right? Where we touch and agree on something. Right? How you doing, Nathalie? Right? So we're getting to a place where that's what we're really doing. And so when you talking about the hooping and hollering, that's not something that necessarily you see in the Bible as far as when somebody preached, right? You never hear Hashvai began to preach, and everybody began to listen to him singing and swinging and doing this and blah. You don't hear, Moses spoke and he began to every chance, he didn't say, Deuteronomy 28 doesn't go, you know, um, I'm sorry, I'm about to say Deuteronomy 6:4, Deuteronomy 28. If thou hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, that's not how, that's not how that goes. But culturally, over time, once again, a lot of chattel slavery involved with that, a lot of persons being forced together in things nationality-wise, where you become a sub property in a nation, and all you have are certain things culturally that you used to have. You pass those things down generationally, and certain things come into agreement, right? Certain things come into agreement. So that's why you do the things that you do. So the singing is more so just stuff, we sang all types of stuff. We sang how to make sure that you follow the North Star. We sang, in belief systems that came once again from asking for it to rain. We sang things as far as just making sure that, everybody was feeling all right. We sang around fire. We sang, these are cultural things that consistently happen. And how you doing, Teresa? Thanks for being part of the community, right? So those are things that you see that happen to where eventually I believe it's gone too far in the sense because the person who asked me, even though they're not yeah, I guess, this is a minister and actually was going around with me almost kind of like an armor bearer, was going to be one for a second with SOC. So I guess we call our brother SOC. I don't know if he wants me to use his name right now, but for the brother that asked, I known him, before a lot of you guys online knew me. He's one of the persons that come back from way, way back when we were doing stuff. But he asked me that and sent me the, DM me the question on IG. So, yeah, just in all those things that we have, where I would say, especially you being a minister and us being ministers together, that the part that's appalling for me out of that is when we teach it as if somebody's not preaching unless they're hooping and hollering. Some of you have been to churches before, well, you'll hear somebody and they'll be speaking the whole time, and then all of a sudden they start going, I feel my help coming in. Oh, hallelujah. Come on, touch your neighbor and say neighbor. I said, touch your neighbor and say neighbor. Right, and they do all that, and we start going, somebody will say, oh, he preaching now. That part is the most concerning. Because it's like he should have been preaching whether he was singing or not. You know what I'm saying? Like, if he wasn't preaching, which is to proclaim, if he wasn't proclaiming the word until he started singing, are we here for the show or are we here for the word? See, that's when it's certain the showmanship. If somebody hoops and hollers, right? There's even persons who practice hooping and hollering. And I don't like that in the sense that there's persons who will tell you it's the Holy Spirit that has them hoop and holler, but then they practicing it. Like if it's Holy Spirit, there's been a couple times, if you've been with us long enough, you've heard me hoop and holler. I think maybe 2 or 3 times in the last several years, but I've done it before. There's been times in the past when I was still going to church after church after church, and Holy Spirit told me, you better hoop and holler here as I'm preaching. She told me, they're not going to hear you unless you hoop and holler, because that's the type of place I was at. How you doing, Sister Joy? So I'm not saying that there can't be any hooping and hollering. I'm not saying Holy Spirit can direct you. I'm not saying that your culture or cultural view of something, even if it's not exactly the biblical culture, cannot be used, to be all things to all people. I'm not saying that, but what I am saying though is when persons start believing that if you don't hoop and holler, then it's not the word. Just like sometimes we do the reverse. If you hoop and holler, then it's not the word. Let's see on what the Holy Spirit is saying to us in that particular situation. There are times when I hear somebody hoop and holler and it hits my spirit like, ooh, they're not saying nothing. It sounds nice. Right? They went up 7 times. Like somebody can be talking about a peanut butter sandwich. Matter of fact, it can't just be a peanut butter sandwich. Where I come from, they used to have the jelly. And you put on the peanut butter and jelly, and you begin to make sure it's got to be even. Some people like crunchy, but I come from where we used to do smooth, and now that I got it on there, I make sure that I got jelly. And some of you like to do strawberry and this and that, but I go back to just having grape. And it sounds really nice, but he ain't saying nothing, or she ain't saying nothing. Right? That's when I have a problem. Like if you saying it, I don't care. Just make sure it's the word. And make sure you're led by the Holy Spirit. If you speaking it and you're speaking absolutely nothing in gibberish, there are a lot of persons who speak gibberish and speak absolutely nothing, but they speak very eloquently. But it's still nothing. It's still trash, right? And I'm not saying because it's not presentable. I'm saying it's not the word. If it's not the word, then it's something that's a poison to our people. That's right. Talking loud ain't saying nothing. Right? So that's more so for me what it is. If it annoys, so to the brother that asked the question, if the hooping and hollering or the singing, so to speak, is annoying you, more than likely it's because the word is not true. It's empty. It's void, right? And Yah's word not only is not void, it won't even return unto him void. It will accomplish that which he set it out to be, right? So that's what we'll say about that. I have another question that somebody asked about, and once again, after this next question is asked, when I come back, feel free, if you guys don't mind, maybe give me 1 to 2 minutes. I'm gonna try to be quick. Give me 1 to 2 minutes though. It'll take me a little bit of time. I gotta walk and grab another device or whatever, and then we'll get right back to it. All right. But thank you for being on. I appreciate you. If you want to take a break and step away from for 1 to 2 minutes, feel free with me. But I'm gonna go. I gotta grab one device real quick. I'll be right back, and then we'll finish up with our Q&A for the day. And thank y'all for being on. Be right back. about you. I don't know. My charger is not working. I apologize. I got just enough at least to get a little bit of something on here. Oh, snap. Oh, snap. I just realized. I think we lost electricity out here. Oh, snap. Okay. I was like, this thing ain't charged at all. Because it didn't. Okay. Yeah, there's no electricity out here. All right, well, pray for us that we get that taken care of. I might have to go. I might have to take all these things in the car. I didn't realize. I was like, wait a minute. I was like, this thing didn't charge at all. I left this thing was on 41%. I've been talking for over an hour and a half, 2 hours almost. And this thing is still at 64. All right, well, praise y'all. At least it means the device is okay. All right, my fault, y'all. I got to make sure that well, at least I'll be able to record. I won't be able to upload the podcast till later, but at least we can record it. Praise y'all. Okay, so the next question. This is weird. I don't want any of this. All right, sorry. It's trying to get us to add all this extra stuff for the podcast. I'm not even. We're not even doing one live right now. All right, praise y'all. All right. So welcome those who are joining on the podcast. Thank you for being on with us. We appreciate you. Had a little bit of issue with power. So there is no. Okay, can you guys over here see me? Sorry about that. For those who are coming on the podcast, it's not the greatest way to start a podcast. Can you guys over here see or hear me? Somebody just said you can't. Can you guys over here see or hear me? Okay, yes, over here. Can anybody over here see or hear me? I didn't know. Are we out? Over here? All right, you guys are fine over here. You guys, I can't say the platform name, but are we out? Are we done? And if so, that doesn't make sense because okay, you can see and hear us. Okay, cool. Welcome, John. How you doing? All righty. Okay. And you can hear fine. Hey, how you doing, Brother Bradley? Praise God, everybody, for missing anybody coming on. All right, cool. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being on the podcast. I apologize. Horrible way to start the podcast. Can you hear me? Y'all, I guess y'all are used to it by now. Yeah. So, where were we at? Third question. So the next question, and then of course today's Q&A. So feel free if there's any other questions, comments, or concerns to ask. Today is specifically for that. There's no specific theme outside of where we're going. We addressed Halloween. We addressed shouting. We addressed hooping and hollering. Next question, basically, and if the person who's on here would, if I don't get the question correct, make sure that I do. But I think the basics of the base of the question that was asked was, who is Esau, right? Basically, what's the difference between Israel and Esau, but who is Esau, which becomes a whole thing within itself quite a bit, unfortunately, over and over and over again. So who is Esau, basically? I don't know if I think that's, the base of the question, pretty much. Whenever we get a question like that, and that's something that we should have, I think, more regular conversation about. We have pretty decent amount here. How you doing, Brother G? But how you doing, G? But we don't really talk about that who is Esau, and really what the conversation of Esau becomes is who's black and who's white, right? For many reasons, a lot of which are not correct. But that's ultimately when you have a conversation about Esau, we really just talk about black versus white. Once again, person's not caring enough to study nationality, right? If we are a nation, if we are the nation of Yahushua, of Israel, then that means we're a nation. But just because somebody, not all skinfolk is kinfolk, and not just saying this is like a traitorous way or a Sambo spirit or so-called Uncle Tom thing or whatever, but I'm actually speaking on this as far as like nationality. Just because somebody is black or brown doesn't mean that if both of you are black or brown, that both of you are part of the same nation. Right. First things first, I'm going to go back again to something that we've already addressed today several times, but let us address it again. Um, we are, if you're talking about nationality is also something you're adopted in. I'm going to use a family, descriptive thought process on this, right? A descriptive thought process concerning family. If I were, we talked about this in our Body Shot series a lot. If I were to pass away and my son is coming behind me, if my son is to receive anything from me, it is because it is in or of my will, and therefore he must be in or of my will, right? Just because he's my son does not guarantee that he's in my will. Now, my son will be in my will, but I'm just using this as an example, okay? Right? But just because one is born of your blood, or has your DNA even, does not mean that one is automatically put into a position. This is why there's even something called a bastard or bastardization. Right? What is a bastard by definition? I'm not cursing. I'm using an actual legit lawful legal term. A bastard does not mean that you have no father. Right? Matter of fact, a bastard does not mean one does not have relationship with one's father. Believe it or not. A bastard is one that that is born by his father, right? Actually, out of the womb of his mother, right? Right. But a bastard, as far as his father's relationship, can have a relationship with his father, but the bastard might not be considered to be in the position of what a son should get or receive. Sorry to use. I'll stop using that word because I know for some it's making you cringe every time I say it. Right. So if he doesn't receive what he's supposed to get, right? So for example, I'm sorry, I will use the term one more time. There's somebody in British history, somewhat in British lore too, because they try to cleanse up all the stuff the persons did. But there's somebody known as William the Conqueror. William the Conqueror is supposedly the first king of England, although there were persons that lived in England before, right? And they were Gallic, which means that many of you would consider them to be white, right? Not all of them were, but that's what many would consider. So you would consider that there were so-called white persons that were Gallic, that were Visigothic, that came from, Germanic persons and stuff like that, and they lived in what you could now today call England, right? They were called even British or Brutish by the Greeks and the Romans, especially the Romans, who were trying to use it as an excuse to take over, right? The same brutish or persons that they went against in Gallic territory, like Julius Caesar, if you know about him. And what I'm talking about are the same persons that he's going against over in so-called Britannia, right? And these persons were there. Then you have a French king, right? And you have France and you have Normandy, right? In Normandy, there is a son of a king at a time, this son named William, and his father is a French king. His father has remarried, and when his father remarries, it doesn't mean he doesn't have a relationship with his son William, but when his father remarries, his father now has another son. Once his father has another son, his father says that second son, that newborn son, will now be placed on the throne. William, upset by this, right, is now known as William the Bastard, because he is not going to be allowed to be on the throne. He looks over at where Britannia is, right, and says, and finds out that somebody over there who's just passed away, who's on the throne, has some kind of weird, obscure, murky type of relationship with his family, and says, well, that's my cousin, and I deserve to be on the throne more than anybody else, and goes over there and takes over. Then begins to bring a bunch of French persons over, and they commit genocide. Half the persons who lived on the island of what you now call England are offed to make sure that William the Bastard can come over. Now he's known as William the Conqueror, right? That's right. So he was born of his father, but for whatever reason, he was not ordained to a certain position, or he was not appointed to a certain position. So just because one is born of you does not mean that they automatically get a position, right? You have to qualify, right? So that's more of a worldly example. I'm just trying to get you to see that a lot of persons don't recognize how things operate. So not only just because you're born Israel doesn't mean that right, you got to follow laws, you have to be appointed, you have to be anointed, right? Not everybody in Israel is appointed to be pilot, or not everybody in Israel is appointed to be morach, or not everybody is appointed to be a judge, not everybody is appointed to be, high priest, Levite, um, Judah, Zebulun, Asher, etc. Not everybody but even in being born those things, you still have to do certain things. You have to follow the law, follow commandments, and if not, even Israelites have gotten their lives taken because of disobedience. Correct. So a lot of the conversation that we have, we just go, oh, just because we're Israel, or what has become now for a lot of persons, just because you're black. And so it makes the Esau conversation really difficult because, and to be fair, our people, so-called our black diaspora, if you want to call it that, worldwide diaspora, has gone through a lot. And so in reestablishing who we are, and persons saying how awful it was to beat us, even if they didn't want to beat us, they wanted to live like us or do what we did and then take it on and appropriate it, but they never wanted to beat us. They never wanted to give us credit. So now that we're being given credit, right, or at least we're crediting ourselves even at times, now all of a sudden it's become anything that is not so-called black is bad, and anything that's black is correct, and that's not correct. Because as much as you don't want to hear this, the Pharaoh who offed our firstborn was black. And as much as we don't want to hear this, the Pharaoh who Yah allowed his heart to get hardened was black. And as much as we don't want to hear this, right? Even persons like Alexander the Great, look up his father, Philip. Philip is considered to be Spartan, which means that Alexander the Great, by your definition, today would be considered to be black. Or somebody like Idi Amin, as much as we want to act like only so-called white person can do evil, guess what he is considered to be? He's black. I'm not here to tell you that no white person has ever done anything evil. I'm here to tell you that it's not as simple as black versus white. And now this is where it gets interesting because, see, one of the reasons why persons even say Esau must automatically be white, so-called white, which once again, if I can just put this in here, there's no such thing as a white person. If you've never heard me say that before, this is exactly what I mean. Not what somebody wants to tell you I mean. This is exactly what I mean. White is not a color. Until you had somebody try to have a so-called white race, or racism, white supremacist mind come across the world, there is no such color as white. White is the absence of color. It means clear. It means see-through. It means unalive, even. Right? It means right, but but even when it means bright, to where you can't tell what color it is, even. But it doesn't mean. But white is not a color. You said we all have different shades of brown. Yeah, persons go into that. Cool. I'm not going to a place where we're gonna act like I don't see color. Right? I don't know if that's exactly what you're doing, but color, like just like Yah has created color for us to see all of the great things here, right? There's evergreen trees, and evergreen trees, when they remain green, there's certain things that you can look for, not just only as far as chlorophyll, but magnesium and stuff throughout the year and things of that nature as well. If you see pink on certain things, you know that means something. If you see red for certain things, you know that probably can help with your heart. If you see a pinkish red on certain things like poke salad, you got to be careful with how poisonous it might be, but you can still eat a little bit of it here or there to help with your heart if you know what you're doing, right? There's a lot of different things that color tells us, right? And if you're an Irish lass with red hair, I think that you should be loved for being an Irish lass with red hair. If you are a blue black, and this is not even making fun of anybody, this is persons who are called this. If you are a blue black Nigerian, I think we should love you for your blue black. If you are somebody who comes from Eritrea, Ethiopia, South Sudan, the middle of Africa, if you're somebody who is Cushitic, right, or Nubian, and you like it to where persons have really dark skin, they have really dark gums, but they have really white teeth, hey, more power to you, right? I don't have, to each their own, right? I think the color, just like anything Yah has created in abundance, is beautiful to be able to see. Like, we're not created to be robots, so we're not all created to be the same, right? How you doing, Sister Taylor? So, even in all these different things. So I'm careful with that, not because of you per se. And how you doing? Is it? Oh, well, I don't want to say. Well, you call yourself this. I rather won't say this again. One useless eater. Welcome. But I'm very careful with that, because a lot of persons who say that usually will use that to say, oh yeah, we color doesn't matter. I don't see color. I'm not saying that's what you say. I'm just saying I'm careful, because a lot of persons, especially from pulpits, love to say we're all different shades of brown, or we're all different shades of wheat, or it's like, okay, yeah, we all are different shades, but I should appreciate, you know, I should appreciate you. If I love my wife, I love her. I love her color. I love her hair. I love her hips. Right? I love all of her. Right? I don't just love the parts that it makes it easy for me to deal with, because then that means I don't really love you. Right? If there's things you got to improve, like my wife loves me, she should love all of me. If there's things that I got to improve, sure. But even in helping me to improve those things, she still takes notice of them and loves me through it, rather than act like it doesn't exist. So I'm going to be careful. So that's why I'm just careful with that, because persons try to change that into, I don't see color. If you're colorblind, that means something's wrong with you. If you're colorblind, you shouldn't be behind the wheel of a car a lot of times. Right? Depending on what kind of color. But even in that, there's different types of colorblind. So we want you to be holy, right? Holistic, right? Holistic love, a holy love. Put a W before that H. A love, one. Integral, integrated, one, right? So when we say, I love my brother, but I don't see his color, then you don't love him. Right? If there's a burn victim and you say, I love her, but I see past her burns, I get what you mean. But guess what? She needs you to also love her burns, because she has a problem with loving herself sometimes when she sees those burns in the window. And women are supposed to have a particular type of look and fix themselves. And society says you got to be this and this and boom, boom, boom. And so she needs the person who's one with her behind the scenes, who she talks to the most and who she'll be with for the rest of her life, to still say, hey, babe, I know everybody else might say this and that or whatever, but I love you. I love them burns too. If we can heal them, that's great. But until they heal, baby, they're part of you. And I love them. Matter of fact, I love them enough to treat them. I love them enough to kiss on them. I love them enough to do what I want you to know. I love you. You said I'm part of Divide and Conquer? Sure, I'm so much part of Divide and Conquer that, so watch this, and moderators, is up to you, but if you won't mind, moderators, the person has useless in the title, and so they're throwing ad hominem, but if you don't mind, allow me to deal with the person just for a second. It's Q&A after all. And the person doesn't even get that. Literally, I've literally been saying that it's wrong to say that Esau is automatically white, and that there's no such thing as a white person, because white is not a color, that we should take everybody's color into account. If somebody's white, technically that means they have to be dead. We didn't start doing that to racism, white supremacy. So the person who's literally not listening to me say we should all come together and realize that all of our colors should be loved, is somebody saying you're divide and conquer because you would say that you love somebody regardless of their color. You're saying I have to ignore a part of them to love them, rather than realize who I am. But let me help you with something, because in your saying I'm trying to divide and conquer, you said you're colored and I'm part of the problem, starting up drama. You using the word colored means that you're using a white racist supremacy thing, because colored is something specifically used against persons to say that they're less than. Why would you use that term? You don't even know if that's what you speak. I don't care what color you are. See, on the way of loving you, right? I can also love you enough to tell you the truth. Right? You're so busy talking about that somebody should. You said you're all different shades of brown. Once again, yes. And so because we're all different shades of brown, we should say the brown doesn't exist. You see what I'm saying? You're having an argument with me that's not even an argument. You're making the separation. You're the one that stopped the whole thing we're talking about to make sure that you come on here to say whatever. So why is it that I'm the person that's separate? By the way, I hate to do this because this is what persons do, but this is the way that you seem to be thinking, so let me help you. This is like when persons say, I got a bunch of white friends, but let me do this. In the chat, have you noticed that there's a bunch of persons from different colors, with different names, different backgrounds? Some that don't even believe what I believe. You said you just unfollowed? I don't care. That's not what the conversation is about. You can unfollow, follow, whatever. You should follow Christ. And by the way, Christ loved persons. See, now the moderators got you. That's okay. See, but that's what I'm saying. This is a difficult thing to talk about, because even this person here, that's why I was saying earlier, you have to be careful on both sides. Because some persons are like, I'm going to make it a point to say that we shouldn't see color. Well, then you don't see what Yah made, and you're a liar. Then. I'm only saying, see, this person's already gone. Moderators already got to him. I tried to help the person. I tried to let the moderators get to him, and I told the moderators, but they're in charge. So they're in charge for a reason, right? But I'm gonna just spend a couple minutes on this just real quick because somebody will probably come on the recording and agree with useless eater, which is a crazy thing because the person who's calling themselves useless eater literally believes that they are useless. It's in their title, right? So we're dealing with somebody who's depressed, if I be honest, right? That's something I peeped. That's why I tried to tell them I'm not going to call them useless again, right? And just keep saying that as a name. And I even made a point to say, hey, that's in the title. So I was telling them, I know who I'm dealing with. Or I'm telling the persons, right? But it's finished here. I see. But here, I'm just going to say this, just in case somebody's listening and you didn't catch it. We're not dividing you on color. I literally just said, not all skin folk is kinfolk. If you're not aware of what that is, what that means is that you, just because you're black doesn't mean that you family. Matter of fact, if we were to get really deep into it, the Bible says just because somebody your family don't mean they're your family, right? And if you even listen to persons who are more scientific with it, they'll tell you that no two siblings have ever actually had the same experience or been raised the same because you're different particles altogether, right? If we want to go deep into it, so I literally just said that, but I'm here to make it known because this is part of the problem with this conversation with Esau versus Israel, is you're thinking about color and you're not able to actually have a conversation regarding nationality. Now, this is when it becomes difficult, right? Matter of fact, let me deal with the physical first, and let's go into the spiritual. How you doing? Is it Babby Buns? Long time talk to. I feel like. Thanks for being on with us, and welcome to everybody for being on with us. We appreciate you. So this is where it becomes difficult in this conversation. If I just be outright, straight up, honest with you, which we try to be all the time. That's right. He's putting color on wickedness, or is putting wickedness by saying it's wicked to look at somebody's color. And once again, that's an overcorrection, or a way that persons even used to try to allow chattel slavery to still be there, to say that, hey man, I don't see color. I'm not right. Like, I'm not saying right, but the problem is that when you don't see color, you don't see the way the United States is built. Anyways, we're see that's that. Now I'm getting off track. Let me stay on track. So when you're talking about nationality, when you're talking about a nation, it's different. And one of the reasons why, and I'll just go with the physical part first, because persons get stuck on that. One of the reasons why, and one of the reasons, especially a lot of Hebrew Israelites, our brethren, get caught up in this too, if we just be 100%, we keep it 100, is because they mismanage the word, because they're trying so hard to make Esau have to be a white person. Right? They mismanage the word. I'm going to show it to you real easy. The reason why they do this is because Asav, or Esau, is considered to be ready, which means he is what? He is red, right? He's described as very ready. Question for you though, if somebody is described as being ready, here's the key. If somebody is described as being ready, how you doing, Bruder Richard? If somebody is described as being ready, does that mean, biblically, that's the key, biblically speaking, does ready mean white? Yeah, I know. It's a nice background for sure, right? All right, see you later. Thank you for being on. Hopefully we'll see you again. We'll be on tonight at 8 p.m. New York time. We'll be on tomorrow, 8 a.m. again, right? So ready does not mean white. Ready does not mean one has rosy cheeks. What they do is, and forgive me, I'm not trying to show my body, but I'm just making a point. I promise you, okay? I'm not showing no craziness. I try to make sure I stay covered up on these as much as is possible, right? Okay, which is 100% of the time. I think 99.9% of the time. One time by accident, I was changing my shirt and I didn't know the camera was flipped around, right? But I promise I'm not gonna show anything, right? Or show whatever. But just I'm making a point. It also describes him as being hairy, which persons say that means white. Problem with that though is that I'm not considered to be white, and here you go. Now, somebody will try to then change that, right, into, and if you weren't seeing on the podcast, I just showed that I have hair on my chest, right? And so, but then what somebody would turn it into, see, but you know, and that means that you're mixed with something. That's why you have hair on you. That's not the truth. You know, there used to be persons that said stuff like that. Like, you know, there were persons that, and still teach in Jamaica, in Haiti, in Cuba. There are persons that teach that you can't be African. You have to stop saying you're African because you have long hair, right? So you can't be African or you can't be black like they are if you have long hair. Which is one of the craziest things ever. They say that comes from you being mixed with somebody who's European. Right? Like that's literally what they teach. You know that, right? But if you just do some research, no, there's plenty of African nations that had long hair. Still do. Yeah, so right, so ready means reddish, which by the way doesn't necessarily mean that you're reddish because even Adamah, which is what Adam is made out of Adamah, which is red or which is dark, rich nutrient earth. But even that is considered to be ready. But when it says ready or red, it's saying there's so much dark, rich nutrient red coming together, it actually begins to look dark or begins to look what we would consider today to be closer to what we call black. Right? You see, so one of the mistakes that's made right off the jump. You said when you were younger, it was a lighter shade and got darker. Yeah. So a lot of I'm just saying. So yeah, exactly right. So you were lighter when you were younger, you got darker. So are you Esau? Or are you not? Right. It's a very bad thought process. It's a very, I'll say it's a very, I'll take the smoke. Why not? How you doing, brother Dennis? I'll take the smoke. Why not? It's a very satanic thing, right? To be like, oh, ready means white. It doesn't. Right? Matter of fact, if I might use a term, and I apologize if it's a derogatory term because some of us probably, especially in our community, don't necessarily like to be called this. If you've ever been called this, or maybe you like it, I don't know. But there's a term called red bone. Okay, there you go. See, what you said one of your daughter's nickname was Red when she was younger. Yeah, matter of fact, Malcolm X, when he was younger, his nickname was Red, and that's because it was red hair. But also, he was a little red bone too. If you look at him when he's younger, especially pictures. Right, so I know I don't know if we ever really called men that. I know we used to call, there were girls and the guys would say, oh, who you talking about? Oh, I'm talking about that red bone one over there, man. Yeah, right, all that stupid stuff we was doing back then. But yeah, red. So red doesn't mean that you're not so-called black, right? So when somebody says he was red, he was ready, that doesn't even mean that he was light skinned. You can be red and dark. Did you know that? Right? Or redneck. Yeah, I get that one too. Right? But I'm just saying. So it doesn't tell us how dark he was. It just simply says he was red. So in comparison to his brother, right? And really, he was red. And then not only, because they're twins. Number one. So whatever one brother was, the other is the same. Right? They're twins. Twins can come out. Not all twins are identical. Technically, there's no such thing as identical twins, but we say that when some of them look so close, we call them identical, right? That being said, though, there's no right there, but there can be other types of twins, right? There can be fraternal twins. There can be all types of other twins, right? So when you're dealing with this, you have two twins that came from the same seed that pierced one egg, right, inside of Rebecca, right, inside of mother Rebecca. There were two babies, right? Two babies, right? We're on the same page as far as that, right? There were two babies, right? And the two babies came from the same seed, so they had the same DNA from mama. They had the same blood from the father. So it's not the bloodline. So you got to be careful because if you're talking about physically, this is where if we just want to squash it real quick, we don't have to work that hard. Because if you're talking about physically, then that means that Esau has the same blood that you do. I know you want to hear that, but it's the truth. Now, as you start splitting up, maybe you can start saying we can tell more. But as far as the beginning, Esau, right, and Jacob, Esav at Jacob, or Jacob and Esau, they have the same blood. They have the same father. That's where your blood comes from, right? Your DNA comes from your mother. You get some of your blood when it's towards the end of the pregnancy, especially when you're being birthed out. But your blood is your father's blood, and the heavy majority of the DNA, if not all the DNA, basically is your mama. I'm not saying that you can't find father's traces of DNA, but hear what I'm saying. If you do a DNA test, right, we're usually looking at bloodline and stuff that's maternal. If you do a blood test, we're looking at what's your father's, right? That's how we can tell if somebody if your child ever needed an organ, right? Your child needed an organ transplant. Your child needed a kidney or something, and you were going to bless them and said, you know what, I'll shorten my life to take care of my child's kidney. What's the first thing the doctor's going to do? They're going to say, we need to test you to see if you have the same blood, right? And they're going to look, right? They're going to look to the father. They're not looking to the mother. They're looking to you, the father. You, the father, would have the same blood. And if they test your blood, and let's say you have O positive, but your child has A negative, somebody's gonna have to come to you and sheepishly be like, I'm sorry to tell you this. I'm sorry to tell you this, Mr. Frankinson, but you can't be a donor to your child. And you as a father would be like, how can I be a donor to my child? You wouldn't even see it at first, right? Because you'd be so loving. How can I not be a donor to my child? What are you saying? You have to say, you don't have the same blood. Well, what does that mean? If you didn't know, you might say, what does that mean? Somebody had to say, if you don't have the same blood, that's not your child. Right? We've heard stories, right? And some of us have heard stories. Prayerfully, you've never been involved in one, but we've heard enough stories and seen enough stuff, right? Where we know that this is stuff that happens, right? So you carry the blood of your daddy, carry the DNA of your mama, right? Some of mama's blood gets there at the end of the pregnancy and through the birth, but the blood comes from daddy, right? So Esau and Jacob are blood. This is one of those things, but once again, see, we're talking about nations. See, what happens is you have one womb here, but ultimately you have two nations. And right? So if we're talking about physically now, and now to even prove it even further, I meant to look this up, but maybe I can look it up on this device because I don't have my Oh no, I know who it is. The Maasai. If you know who the Maasai tribe is in Africa, right? The Maasai, the sisters that be really red, and they, even though they do put, to be fair, they do put red clay in their body and on their body all over the place and everything. And they do their locks and stuff, but they put the red all over the in the hair and everything, right? That's something that's Maasai culture. They are considered to be Edom. Did you know that? They are considered to be Edom. And if they don't look so-called black, I don't know who do. Right? The locks, the way they twist their hair, they do the hair and everything like that, look them up. They're considered to be Edom. But your mindset only goes white because what's happened is, once again, due to chattel slavery, and now due to us coming out of stuff and us feeling better about ourselves and us saying black power, and I'm not mad at the black power movement. I think it's spelled correctly the way Elder Tamer has. I don't have my MacBook in front of me, but I believe it's Masai. It's very close to that if it's not. It might be two S's, but I think I have that wrong. I think she's correct. Right? But either way, right? They're considered to be Esau. They're not the only African nation considered to be Esau. Hey, Shalom, how you doing, Sister Michelle? Right? So they're not the only, or Shalom, okay, right? But they're not the only nation considered to be African nation considered to be Esau either. So a lot of persons might get caught up in this whole argument. Well, who's Esau? Who blah blah. It's not as simple as Esau's white. Matter of fact, here we go, nation again, and talk about bloodline DNA. If you actually trace it, you'll discover that there are certain Gentiles, not all, but certain Gentiles who are considered to be married into Esau or vice versa as well. Which means that you can't look at Esau only through the lens of color. Okay, it's Maasai. All right, thank you. Right. So, but there are different groups that are considered to be Esau, right? Edom is the city where Esau went. So even when you talk about the Edomites, an Edomite is from the city of, right? Or you can say maybe from the people of. But Edom is basically Esau. They're the same. So so it gets into a very and the same thing we also have to look at as well that we don't like to look at, that Esau was scattered just like Israel was scattered, right? A lot of matter of fact, when we have a whole thing just on Esau that we did a while ago. I believe it's on our current YouTube channel now because the old one they took away, right? But if you look on that one, we have a whole thing. I think we might have even done a series, a mini series, but a series nonetheless on it as well. And we even went into Jasher. I'm forgetting the chapter. I want to say it's like Jasher chapter. It might be Jasher chapter 19, chapter 90 something. I think it's Jasher chapter 19. There are 90 chapters, right? 90. I forget how many chapters in Jasher. Sorry, but I believe there's 90 something chapters. I think it might even be like chapter 90, something like that. But we went through and specifically read and talked about where they spread, and even talks about them being married into some of the heavy Roman society and stuff like that. It talks about how they were still around in Canaan, right? You know, a matter of fact, if you know about Esau, Esau um, is actually mixed in as well with Kemet, because persons forget. Here's another one for you. We went through this in the Body Shot series recently. So, hey, how you doing, Alice? So, if you go to Genesis, I can't recall what chapter, but when you go to Genesis, you know, we're talking. It's got to be at least chapter 30 something or 40 something, going somewhere in there, because Genesis 28. No, no, before. Excuse me, I'm wrong. We're talking about, well, basically, if you go to Genesis and you go to where you're dealing with Abraham and Hagar, Hagar is Kemetic, which a lot of persons don't talk about as well, right? So Hagar is Kemetic. She's from Kemet. She's so-called Egyptian, Mislaim. Hagar, once she's kicked out, she takes um, Ishmael with her, her son, right? And in Ishmael, we'll see in a second, Mr. Eternal Being. Welcome, by the way. If you don't mind, if you don't mind, let me get this through real quick. Esau's talked about in quite a bit of places, even if not by name. But where were we at? So Ishmael goes with his mom. Ishmael, when he cries out, the Most High hears him, takes care of Hagar and Ishmael. They go back into Kemet, right? That's where they go, right? And Ishmael and Israel will stay. Um, oh, no, I got this wrong. And Isaac, excuse me, will stay with Abraham, right? Um, then Abraham passes away. Isaac is still up there, or whatever, and then Isaac has Isaac and Rebecca. They will have Esau and Jacob, or Asav at Jacob, or Esau and Jacob, right? Esau will then end up going once all the split happens at first, and he doesn't like the fact that not only has he sold his birthright, but he realized he gets tricked out of his uh, his blessing. He's upset. He's frustrated. They send Israel back to, or they send Israel to Padan Aram, the land of Abraham, right? They send him back there to get married, just like Isaac's wife Rebecca came from there. Rebecca talks to Isaac and says, "Hey, you know, not only does he need to get out of here, but I fear like he's going to be like his brother and start marrying outside of who he's supposed to, and believers in the way that, you know, the wives of our culture should be." They send him back. Hey, how you doing, bold servant? To Padan Aram, which is eventually, you know, basically send him, you know, back to where we're going to see Bethel, right? And so he goes. So he goes there to Bethel, and then goes a little further after that. Then comes back to Bethel. In the meantime, Ishmael, I'm sorry, Esau, being upset, goes down to Kemet. He's already been married a couple of times. Goes and gets married, then goes down and gets married again into the daughters of Ishmael, right? So Ishmael is his family, but also he goes back down to Kemet. So Esau also has a lot of Kemetic stuff in them. So when you're talking about Kemet and then us coming back and Joseph marrying into again, there's a lot more mixture than what you think, including a lot of things that are Abrahamic but are also Kemetic and coming together. So Esau, somebody trying to make it as simple as Esau is white, you're not even being honest about Genesis, the beginning. Did Esau not understand the value of the birthright? Real quick on that, great question. Real quick on that, um, he understood it to a certain degree. We know this because remember the reason he gives up his birthright. If you read the book of Jasher, is that he's just he's not just tired. So in Genesis it just comes across Esau was tired and that was it, and he just was like, oh, I'm gonna just sell everything for a bowl of porridge because I'm tired and I'm hungry and I'm not patient enough. What actually happens if you read the book of Jasher and put it together with Genesis, and you'll discover that Esau is what you discover is that Esau is dealing with his um, he's just fought. He's literally gone into Nimrod's camp, and he off Nimrod, and then I think the servants of Nimrod came for him. I don't recall this part if he had to fight them off too, or if he just had to outrun them, right? And he's now come back, and he's tired and frustrated. And he knows all the stuff that comes with the birthright because dealing with Nimrod reminds him and lets him know, man, I'm gonna have to deal with evil and all this stuff. I have to fight against all these persons. So he rolls out, he leaves, and goes back home. And so when you hear him complaining about the birthright and talking about I'm hungry and this and that, I don't even want this no more or whatever, like basically that's a conversation hindering on, he just went through a lot. He's like, I don't really want it. Like when Jacob's like, well, shoot, if you want, I'll give you something to eat, but I want your birthright. Kind of joking, you know, but kind of serious too, obviously. And he's like, man, shoot, this birth. That's the context. He's like, man, this birthright. Like, you see all the stuff I just went through. You see how tired I am. If this will come with it, man, shoot, whatever, man. Just give me the. So, did he understand what came with it to a certain degree? Did he understand what he was losing? Apparently not. You know, if he was so upset about it, even though, to be honest, he wasn't as upset about the birthright as he was when all of a sudden he realized that he definitely he didn't get tricked out the birthright. He got tricked out the blessing. When he got tricked out the blessing, then all of a sudden he's like, oh, my birthright and my blessing. The reality is though is that you gave the birthright up, right? So could we say that he knew about it to a certain degree? For sure, because he was actually operating in it and realizing how much stuff and taxing it was, and how he just escaped with his life, being as great as he was and hunting and stuff, but just escaped with his life. He's kind of like, hey man, you want it, you can have it, type deal. Right? It wasn't until he got tricked out the blessing that all of a sudden it was like, oh, even though when we study, which is something we're about to go into too on the next part, you keep on researching, excuse me, sorry, it's almost fell down on that. But you do some study on it and research on it, and you reading your Bible, you'll see that the blessing and really should go to the firstborn anyways. At least that's what they were thinking. And Jacob, technically, remember they were wrestling even in the womb. Right? Remember they wrestled all the time. Remember he even asked for a blessing when he's wrestling the angel, and the angel gives him the name Israel, and that's supposed to be the blessing that he's looking for, right? And ultimately that name change, and that's to make sure that him and him and Esau don't have to wrestle anymore, right? So Israel and Jacob, so technically, biblically speaking, it gets to a place where you see, and we're going to get into this a little bit in a second, but you see that the Most High keeps saying, as much as we keep going, oh, well, Esau was firstborn, blah, blah, the Most High keeps saying over and over again, I never saw Esau as the firstborn. So when we see they're wrestling in the womb, the Most High, just because Esau might have got into a position before Jacob to come out, right, doesn't mean the Most High saw that as what was there. Remember that goes on with Judah's sons that he has with Tamar, right? The ones that are like he's of a grandfather's age because he didn't do what he's supposed to do with his sons, and the sons were disobedient too. And so he has his two sons with Tamar. I forget the sons' names. The second one means what? Power or strength? Or I might be wrong about that. Maybe one of the disobedient sons' name was Power, something like that. But yeah, the second son that he has, so his fifth son overall, second son he has with Tamar, is they're both twins. But remember, he actually came out first. He put his hand out. They wrapped the thing around his hand, came back in, and then the other child came out first, right? And then that child would be the one the second one though, which was really the first, right? So the same kind of thing goes on with Jacob and Esau in the womb. So even with all that going on, technically, Yah always keep saying over and over again, I never saw Esau as firstborn. I never saw Esau as a birthright. Now, Isaac did, when you go and read it. And thanks for being part of the community, Mr. Eternal Being. Isaac sees it. Isaac sees it and has him as a favorite child. Right out of the two, he looks at Esau actually as being, kind of like weak. He loves the strength of Esau. He loves Esau as a hunter. He loves Esau's cooking, his venison, right? Which shows that strong man can cook, right? Get on that, brothers. Strong man can cook. Right? It's okay to get in the kitchen every once in a while. Don't let him fool you, right? But Esau, he loves all these different things about Esau and really doesn't have much. He has love for Jacob. Doesn't say he's dismissive of him. It's just like he's just not his cup of tea. He prefers what he sees in Esau. But then later on, right? Later on, you'll see that. But you see that Yah keeps saying all the time when we see this discussion, he keeps saying, "I've never put Esau first. That was not me." Right? Like y'all did that, and that shows that sometimes Yah can see the things that are going on the inside. He reads the heart. He sees the things that we can't read, and the things we cannot digest are the things that he is sovereign over, and we should give him, his credit, his due. Let him do what he does with that. Right. So that's a great question. So now going back into the main part of the question, you said if y'all wanted Esau to inherit, it would have been so. There you go. That part as well. So with all those things coming together, so we can see very clearly when somebody says Esau is so-called white, it's first of all, it's not biblical. And then when you talk about it, even with telling you that it went into Europe, sure, so you have to say that Esau can be an array of colors. How you doing, Yehuda? Right? That's right, Esau is physically first, if you will, but he was never spiritually first. And if Yah said he's not spiritually first, it means it's going to manifest to where you're not going to be physically first. Right? So Esau, so that part, when persons say, have an argument about Esau and color, we see very clearly. First of all, you're skipping over Esau being Kemetic. You're skipping over Esau being a twin. You're skipping over the fact that Esau is of the same nation, at least to start off with. Eventually they become two different ones, right? Of their own accord, they start their own nations, but and decide not to be united. You'll see that you have to be honest about the fact that ruddy does not mean white. So persons who are saying just because somebody's ruddy, and forgive me for doing this again, I'm not showing my body, I'm just giving an example. Somebody says that because you're hairy and because you're hairy, that means that only white persons have it and you got to be mixed. You guys haven't looked at Africa, which is one of the most diverse places. And before somebody says, but we're not African. Once again, you talking about go look up some stuff. Look up mummies. Look up stuff. Not every African person is just smooth chested out here with no hair, right? With no mustache and no beard, right? Some of y'all out here aren't willing to do some quick research and look at some quick pictures, right? Right, but persons will say some weird stuff like that because they're trying their best. Remember, I just told you, I was just showing you or teaching you at least how in certain Caribbean places they try to say that if you have long hair, you're not really of African descent, and that makes no sense, right? That makes zero sense. You have no hair? You talking about what, one particular group of Bantu? One particular subsect of Bantu that doesn't have long hair, and you try to say everybody doesn't have long hair. Something wrong, right? In Mali, they had long hair. In Ghana, I'm talking about ancient Ghana, they had long hair. Yeah, have flat feet, automatic Native Americans. Right. So we have some weird, some weird stuff. We have some weird, but I'm just saying we have some weird ideology that comes in and we just automatically put it there. Because once again, I get it to a certain degree. We're looking for anything culturally to adhere to, but we don't want to necessarily stick to the culture. It's like I was talking about yesterday when persons talk about fringes and stuff, and they say, well, you're not wearing your fringes. And then they talk about, well, what about your tzitzit or tzitzit? And it's like, they're the same thing. You don't even know that because you're arguing something that's not even our belief system. And then you hear somebody, no, that's not true. No, because you do it. It's like I have to explain to persons. You know, I've been doing more of it this year, but I have to explain to persons if you're arguing over the fringes, you don't even know how that's supposed to be. If we read the scripture, right? If some of you were there with us, but when you read the scripture on it, it tells you specifically you're supposed to take the part of your garment on the fringes of it, and you actually make the fringes, you know, tattered. Now, yes, some of that stuff happened naturally because of one set of clothes that we might have had in the wilderness, stuff like that. But you were supposed to take your own clothing on this corner, on the back corner, on this corner, on the back corner. You make, if that's what you're gonna make the fringes out of. That's what's known as the site, or what you call the tzitzits, right? And you would take those and you would make those, and then you put the blue ribbon around the edges. So the whole thing wasn't fringed up, and you didn't just iron on some fringes, right? You were supposed to do it in corners, and you put a blue ribbon around that. Now, what's become stylistic, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing per se, I'm just saying the style that's happened is now we like to have the fringes all the way around, and we like to do that because it looks different than the way that Jewish person do the fringes. The reality is that if you're gonna go by, no, this is the word. So before you carry me on the fringes, I'm like, you're not even wearing your fringes correct. But it comes from what? Lack of culture, and we're trying so hard to get anything that will accept a lot of things. Sometimes it's not even original, right? The Bible literally says if you're going to do the site or the fringe, this is exactly how you do it. We're not doing it that way. So before you hit me with 55 scriptures or say you can't listen to me preach because I don't have my fringes on today, the fringes that you're looking for are not even biblical, right? So it's kind of the same thing. You have persons that are talking about Esau, and it's like, bruh, the Bible says that what you preaching about Esau is not even biblical. Because Esau, it looks comedic, and you can't tell, right? And Esau, that's what he looks like, and he married into that. Amongst other women, he had multiple wives, but he married into that, right? So when he married into that, and his children came out of that, we know what they look like, at least many of them, right away, because they look Kemetic. And we don't have a problem saying, hey, you couldn't tell the difference between Joseph and his brothers couldn't tell the difference between him and Kemetic persons. We don't mind saying Moses was hidden in Kemet because of the way he looked, right? We don't mind saying Moses' wife is Cushitic and she blends right in. We don't mind saying that Christ was hidden in Kemet, right? We don't mind saying any of those things, but then all of a sudden, but they'll skip over, interestingly enough, hey, you know, Esau went back to Kemet and his children were Kemetic. So all that stuff about ready, this and that or whatever, hey, when Moses shows up on the scene, right? Matter of fact, keep working it because Jacob will have children. So you're talking about Esau's nephew. Remember, it says that Ishmaelites are the ones who were the slave traders that Yasav or Joseph was sold into slavery to. Yahasav was sold into slavery to the Ishmaelites. The Ishmaelites took them back where? To where Ishmael lived. Ishmael was in Kemet. They take him to Kemet, and when they take him to Kemet, the Ishmaelites take him back down to Kemet. Where you're right, they take him back to where Esau has married into Ishmael. Esau is with Ishmael, who is the half brother, right? The brother of Israel marries into the half brother. I'm sorry, am I saying it right? Yeah, the half brother of Israel, Esau, married in to the brother of Israel, Esau, decides to break his nationality and go into a different nation and marries into who? Into the half brother of Isaac. Two opposing brothers, two opposing kingdoms, both from Abraham, blood by blood, but two different nations. Right, and your fringes are for you to remind you of who you are and who you belong to as well, according to Numbers chapter 15. Thank you. Yeah, right? And how you doing, Roots, man? How you doing? Right. So I'm just saying we have a lot of different stuff. So it's like I said, it becomes difficult because for a lot of persons this has been oversimplified, right, and simplified to a place it shouldn't have been, which is, oh yeah, if you're Esau, you're white. If you're Israel, you're black. No, never was. And remember, we made the point about ready. Adam, who was considered to be extremely dark, if you look at the dirt that he came out of, if you study the words, it can be referred to as ruddy. But if you have enough dark, rich nutrient earth, it can be extremely dark red, and you put enough of it together, it begins to look black. He's made out of the dirt of the ground. The same dirt that we would say is black, but really is extremely dark red, or enough red put together and healthy enough that it begins to look like it's so-called black. That's what Adam's made out of. Which means Adam, by definition, could be considered to be ruddy, even though we know him to be extremely dark. So it's an oversimplification of it. So we literally have just shown, you can look at Jasher and see where they went into Europe, but you can see before that, you can see that clearly, right? If we're talking about African, because Esau is more African than us, technically, right? But if you're talking about African, right, Esau and his people over time become more of that. Now we talk spiritually, which is where I think the focus should really be. I'm not saying we shouldn't. I just said we don't do this thing where we say we don't see color, but if we talk about spirit, sure, yeah. If you should be able to call after the shout out. I guess that should be fine. And how you doing, Minister Castleberry? Welcome on. No, I'm the opposite of I'm the opposite of you more than likely. But thanks for being on, right? So in all these different things that we're doing, right? And all these different things that we're doing, right? And it's okay if that's what you are. It's just not what I am, right? Whatever point you're trying to prove. But in all this stuff that we're talking about with Jacob and Esau, yeah. So if we want to, we can in fact trace certain things. And even with Esau, it gets difficult because after a while, just like there's not a lot of pure Israelites anymore, to be honest. There's not a lot of pure Edomites or those of Esau. There's just not. Now, that being said, with all that coming together, Esau and Israel is not only about, hey, look at them because or the color they are. A lot of it has to do with look at the spirit and what these things are attached to. And that you can have two nations come out of the same womb, same belief system, same Abrahamic covenant, and yet somebody take one and go a different way with it. Just like you have happened with Ishmael and Isaac, right? And even though I'll tell you that, I have great respect for our Muslim brethren, and even though I'll be somebody to tell you that not only do I have great respect for our Muslim brethren, I also have great respect, for those who follow those ways, and that a lot of the ways are more similar to our ways than what you would think they're not. That being said, Ishmael is not following everything that Isaac followed. And Esau is not following everything. Matter of fact, Esau has purposefully not followed just about anything that Israel follows. And the problem that this happens, right, is that what happens with this is that Esau, the spirit of what's going on as well. Remember, the spirit becomes manifest anyway. So even if we talk about physical quality, you have to talk about where it manifested from spiritually. The problem that really starts to happen with this, the thing that really we have to have in-depth conversation, is that is Esau having given up the birthright and being upset about being tricked out of the blessing, although once again the Most High never really says, hey, it never really is for you anyways. Esau is trying to get back what belongs to them, at least in their mind. They should be the head and not the tail. They should be above and never beneath. They should be the example. They should be the ones who we go to figure out how to pray or how to do this, that, or whatever. And they will do, and they will join up with just about anybody, whether Kemetic, whether Canaanite. These are enemies of Israel, whether Roman, whether Greek, whether Babylonian, whether United States, whatever. They will do whatever is necessary to try and get back what they consider to be theirs, right? Now, the danger on the opposite side is that you have Israel who tries to be like Esau, although you already have the birthright and the blessing. See, so it's deeper than just white. I just mentioned, right? If we want to talk about so-called white, we're going to take our leave in just a few minutes, right? I'm finished for today. But if we want to go there, right, to the so-called white versus black thing, look at the spirit of Esau and how the spirit of Israel, how a lot of us, we have a zeal for Elohim, but it's not according to knowledge, according to Romans chapter 10, right? And rather than do what we're supposed to, we wanted to mix and match with everybody else because, oh, look at how much fun they're having, or we wish we could do there. We want to be in our flesh too. But the difference between Israel and Esau, and the reason why the Most High says, I have hated Esau, it says this in Malachi. He says that Esau is the end of the world and Israel is the beginning of everything after the end of the world. Right? It says that in Second Esdras, I believe. Right? He says quite a few places that he does not, he tells us to speak against the mountain of Esau, and that the preachers who aren't doing so are the persons who are messing with the sheep. That's Ezekiel 34 and Ezekiel 35. Right? And once we start doing that, Ezekiel 36, then dry bones can live, Ezekiel 37. Right? It's very consistent in the word about not only Esau being white or black or whatever. The word is very consistent about Esau representing the world. And that's why it's very easy for you to see Esau and then see Gentiles, or Esau and see Rome, or Esau and see Babylon, because they're very similar. But Esau has never been described in your Bible as being so-called white. They have never been described in your Bible as not being that, but there also can be different things, and we can check and see where they go, right? Just like, by the way, a lot of Canaanites. You do some research, you'll discover that Canaanites and the laws that they have, like when we talk about sovereignty and talk about all caps and all these different things of sovereignty, you'll see that those are Canaanite values that through, trade routes and through marriage and stuff like that eventually make its way up to Europe. Right? But if you're not careful, you'll just think, oh, black is this, white is this, or vice versa. Yeah, and so if you're not careful, we become a stumbling block. But when you do your research, you'll discover very quickly, before we even had titles such as black and white, and before we even had persons that started to get lighter. Because remember, getting lighter as far as being a normalcy, because remember, being lighter at one point, that's why Noah's family is in shock when Noah's born the way that he is, because they've never seen any form of albinoism ever. Nobody had ever seen an albino before. Noah's the first one, at least the first one that family in particular has seen. Right? So the further back we go in the story of mankind, the darker everybody becomes. And we got to be careful. So hopefully that answers the question. I'm sorry, we really only got to 3 questions today, but within those 3, we had a bunch of other questions that popped up. I know I didn't get to everything. I do apologize about that. I'm a little out of practice. We're getting back in the swing of things. I just started back on Monday, and yesterday was the beginning of us getting day by day by day by day. But prayerfully, we were able to answer those and the other questions that popped up in the midst of that. Somebody asked about calling, so if you want to, feel free to call after the shout out is done. So I'd say maybe give us, another 20 minutes or so. We should be finished. As a reminder, sometime by tomorrow evening, so we have our evening session, our real talk session in the evening on TikTok and on YouTube, Kofi_42 on TikTok, YouTube, same channel. And then on tomorrow we'll be on 8 a.m. New York time on both of these same channels for our live session. We'll also be we'll have our podcast at 10 a.m. New York time, one more time, by Elder and Nais for the month of October. We will then have we'll have our Shabbat school for the babies. We won't be bringing back yet our England group, but that you'll be back soon. I'm gonna be sending out some messages and making sure we double check times, and then also we'll allow some other members of SOC, if you'd like to come in with them and fellowship with the persons across the pond. We'd love to have you on there with us so we can have better fellowship with them. And then we will have men's meeting tomorrow at 7 p.m. New York time. Is the first Saturday, and we'll get back on track with all that stuff as well. Okay. And then Sunday coming up, ministerial staff, we have our ministerial prayer at 7 a.m. New York time. So prayerfully you can join us. Oh, my pleasure. How you doing, Minister Smaila Ray? And then we'll have our live session on Sunday, 11 a.m. New York time as well. So, and that'll, and also too, we have some persons that are willing to help us with SNAP benefits. Being well, SNAP benefits apparently they put together enough that hopefully all of us here will still be able to. Those of you who are dealing with still have those benefits, you'll be able to get those things. Um, but just in case you have any problems with food, we don't have a lot of stuff going on yet. SOC, we may have some stuff that we can help out with some of those items. But I know in Tampa, in the Tampa area in Florida, we have two persons. Matter of fact, Sister Taylor, you got to get in touch, I think, with Sister Sage, who has some stuff that she's trying to put together during this time frame to help out families. So you guys can work together. If there's any families who are in the area, or you're close enough to the Tampa area that maybe you want to travel to get some food or something together and have somebody bless you. Um, but we have some persons that can help down there. We also have some persons who are partnered with us. If you've been with us in Philadelphia in that park that we just did, whether it was this year or before, where we've met up a couple of times now, where we did Pentecost this year, and had Minister Raj and Minister Akita do their initial sermons. Um, that's where we're gonna they have some stuff in Philadelphia area that you can partner with. So if you're in Pennsylvania, or maybe if you're close enough where you can get to one of these places, they've given us a list that they believe that we can use. So we have that stuff. We're gonna try to find some more places and things like that. If we can also be ready for those things as well with each other, we'd love to be able to help out. Donate funds for food. If you'd like to send donations for food specifically, you can send them to our Cash App, $ find Kofi one. It should be in our link tree as well. And just make sure you specifically say it's for food, so we make sure it gets to persons. So that way, if persons do ask us for food, we can make sure that's set aside. We hadn't really. We're just starting to put some stuff together. Person started contacting me and saying, "Hey, we can do this and we can do this." So I'm kind of taking their advice and stuff and trying to put together stuff. So somebody asking if there are certain regions we can do that. So if you feel like that, but obviously there are some persons that, depending on where they live in the United States corporation, in the world too, but if we focus on a lot of us who are here, there's a lot of persons who might need some help. So if you're able to do something, or if somebody does need help specifically, matter of fact, there are families that we know need help. Still, so if you'd like to send, not even to us, if you want to send it directly to them, reach out, and we can try and get you their information. You can talk to them or whatever, and make sure you get it directly to them. I'm not like I have to touch it to make sure somebody eats. If you try to make sure somebody eat, let's make sure they eat. But anyways, I love you all to life. I hope that this helped. We're getting back in the swing of things, so forgive me. I'm still getting. It's been a little while. This is not always the easiest thing to go back from this to this to this to this person, blah blah. So I hope I did well enough. It's not my best, but we're getting there, and we'll make sure that we continue to walk this walk together. And also too, might I say this? In the stuff, this is just Holy Spirit led. This isn't getting on anybody. It's just something Holy Spirit put on me, and I saw earlier today. I praise Yah that we're in a position to where we can do this in the time of need for our people, right? And we can have more persons who are helping with food and things of that nature. That being said, why not do this all the time? Think about it, pray about it. And thank you for being on today, Baba Kasha. Right, pray about it. If this is something that Yah is like, you have the ability to do this in this season. What if you could do this, year round? What if you could do this where it's nonprofit? What if you could do this to where this becomes what you do? Just pray about it. Think about it for those that are doing it. Might be something that helps you to go to another level. Amen. All right. So love you all to life. You all take care. I really got to go. So I thank you so much. You said, by the way, the emergency fund may come through. Yeah. So I know they talked about that too. So, but well, yeah, Sister Tia, anything that you like to know as far as resources as far as. Yeah, well, I don't know. It depends on which somebody. If you're talking about just overall, I have stuff overall for us. We're working on it once again too, because we're trying to redo. I just got a lot of stuff I'm doing on my own, unfortunately. But we're trying to redo the website to where the website's not so Kofi centric anymore. It's grown and it's from an old model that I had to where I wasn't even putting SOC and virtual stuff together yet. So it's so I'm taking time to by the beginning of the year have that stuff. But we have things that are in order where if you're just like, hey, who has books or who has this or who do I go to for food or who do I, like we have I can give you a list of those things, you know. But we are working on it. I am aware. We were supposed to have like a black book a long time ago, and it's just certain things, especially when we got busier and blew up, and then certain changes we had to make, throughout the year with certain positions and stuff. It's just been a little difficult to get some of that stuff done. But I promise, if you ever text me or something, or email me, or just like, hey, matter of fact, if I can recall, I'll try to send you something. But if you're just like, hey, I want to know who does boom, 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 boom. If it's that simple, text me or give me an email reminder or something like that, and I'll make sure I get something to you ASAP. All right. I love you all to life. You all take care. We'll see you later this evening. Early Shabbat Shalom to you if I don't see, excuse me, early Shabbat Shalom if I don't see you later. We appreciate you. We love you. We honor you. We respect you. And we appreciate you. That means we lift you up in value. All right. So thank you so much. We give our honor and praise to the Most High. We give our praise and honor to Him for my wife, the Honorable Maya, who lives a life that's able to be honored. To the moderators, ministerial staff, SOC, Lottie, Di, and everybody, once again, we thank you. We thank you. We thank you. We appreciate you so very much. We're going to do a very, 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 very quick shout out again today. I'm trying to get my stuff back in order, but right now, just being honest, I still don't have everything on me I normally would. So I apologize for not having all of our stuff that we normally would have, even including the music and going longer and stuff. I just don't have my normal resources. So I'm working on that. Pray for us. We'll be traveling and stuff in a little bit too. But love you all. I hope you guys have a great day. We hope that you enjoy what the Most High has for you even here musically in a second. And if you want to join us on TikTok, of course, for that. And we love you all. Continue to do great and mighty things. But remember, as always, that you are loved. You're necessary. You're majestic. You're fearfully and wonderfully made. And you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in this system no longer have to be of it. Shalom, family. Take care. Peace. Those of you who know how the shout out works, do what you do.